Morning, 2 days after we voted in the EU referendum. Let's pause, let's reflect, let's plan. What's happening next? Let's talk about the future. From 9, what needs to change in the Labour Party? Jeremy Corbyn is under fire from his own MPs. He's giving a speech about Labour's future later. From 8 o'clock, the leader of the Conservative Party, the Prime Minister David Cameron. He'll be out by October, so who should be next at the helm? First, though, this.
If Parliament judges that a second referendum is the best or only way to protect our place in Europe, it must have the option to hold one.
The Scottish Cabinet will hold an emergency meeting later after First Minister Nicola Sturgeon warned there'll be a second independence referendum. Call me, let's talk. So what is the question this morning? Well, okay, firstly, this is the first time we've spoken since Thursday. What have we done? Did you see Michael Gove's face? And Boris Johnson and Gisela Stewart on that stage. Don't tell me for a moment they thought that was actually going to happen. Did they? Did they really believe that? So they were the bookies. I went to bed after the Sunderland result, and it was 6-1 on the bookies. 6-1 on. So that is as much as a dead cert you can ever get. That there is no chance we're going to leave. Woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning. Sun streaming through the blinds. Don't have curtains. Blinds. We're rented at the moment. Blooming things. And the sun was streaming through, and I looked at my phone, and it said, we're leaving. And I went, oh, my God. So, listen, I want to congratulate everybody for being brave. But now what? Oh, my... Honestly, it doesn't mean anything to anybody. You know those guys in Sunderland, which was the shot for me, like jumping up and down, and they were, spitting everywhere, pints in hand. They were there. Do you really think that they care even the slightest about the pound? Do you think they care in the slightest about somebody looking at a screen in London and seeing literally every graph pointing just beneath their expensive shoes on the floor? They don't care at all. All right? And do you think that the Remain side kind of got that? Not at all. And anyway, so what are we going to do next, and why are we such a divided nation? What has happened? 0345 6060 973. Specifically, I want to talk about the future of the Union in this hour. I want to talk about Scotland's future, Northern Ireland as well. I mean, you've got England and Wales on the one side, you've got Scotland and Northern Ireland on the other. Are we going to have another Scottish independence referendum? I mean, that's going to be like a drop in the ocean compared to all the news that we have been absorbing over the last 24, 48 hours, to be quite honest. To sum it all up, have a little listen to this. This is, honestly, it's been one of the weeks of all time when it comes to politics. And more than that, it's the very fabric of our society. Here's the story.
I'm now going to call this referendum for the Leave campaign. I can't see a way back now for Remain.
Every vote is being fought for up and down the country.
So if you're just waking up, this is where we find ourselves. We are on the verge of it being mathematically impossible for Remain to come back.
The total number of votes cast in favour of Remain was 16,141,241. The total number of votes cast in favour of Leave was 17,410,742.
The United Kingdom has voted to leave the European Union. The pound has fallen to a 31-year low.
June the 23rd needs to become a national bank holiday, and we will call it Independence Day.
Stanley Johnson, have you spoken to Boris?
Well, I've sent him 2 texts, and actually I sent him 3, and each one of them has come back, message undeliverable. And I can promise you, it's extremely irritating.
Most important thing is that we minimise the bad consequences and we see how we can try and find a way forward. But there's no point in hiding it. For me, this is a very, very sad day.
What's going to happen today is David Cameron's going to go. He's not going to survive the day. His position is totally and absolutely untenable.
We're now getting reports that in about 6 minutes' time, David Cameron will be taken to the steps of Downing Street to resign.
The British people have made a very clear decision to take a different path. And as such, I think the country requires fresh leadership to take it in this direction. This is not a decision I've taken lightly. But in my view, we should aim to have a new Prime Minister in place by the start of the Conservative Party conference in October.
The Bank of England will not hesitate to take additional measures as required, as markets adjust, and as the UK economy moves forward.
Parliament judges that a second referendum is the best or only way to protect our place in Europe. It must have the option to hold one. That means we must act now.
So this was Boris Johnson leaving his front door and getting very quickly into his car. As it drove down the road, it was followed by packs of people who were chanting, shouting things like scum at the car.
I believe we now have a glorious opportunity. Above all, we can find our voice in the world again. A voice that is commensurate with the fifth biggest economy on earth. Powerful, liberal, humane, an extraordinary force for good in the world.
I love this country and I feel honoured to have served it. And I will do everything I can in future to help this great country succeed.
Well, there you go. So it hasn't been too busy a week, has it? My Lord, that was absolutely amazing. Cameron gone. What about the future of the Union? What about our divided Union? What about the independence for Scotland? Join me, 0345 6060 973. We'll talk Cameron and Corbyn and all sorts of things between now and 10 o'clock this morning. Theo Washerwood is with us, LBC's political editor. He's on College Green. I've just come past you on my motorbike. He's in Westminster. Drew Hendry, MP, is with us as well, Scottish National Party MP for Inverness, Nairn, Badenoch and Strathspey, which is a wonderful title for the area that you represent. Drew, Theo, a very good morning to you. Let me talk to you first. Drew, Theo, first. It's actually seismic, isn't it? Do you think this heralds the breakup of the Union?
Well, that's what Nicola Sturgeon, the Scottish First Minister, said yesterday. Of course, this was always on the cards. The SNP were open about it. If we left the European Union, the United Kingdom left the European Union, then Scotland, she said, that would be the trigger for a second referendum on Scottish independence. And I was speaking to one very senior SNP MP yesterday. They view that second independence referendum as an open goal. It's not going to be close like last time. They're not going to lose closely, by a narrow margin. They think they're going to win, and they're going to win big. And it's just going to be a straightforward matter of protecting Scottish interests. Because, of course, the SNP, last time round it was close. It was all about security. Now the security message is on the SNP's side. It's about their safeguarding their future in the European Union. And Scotland overwhelmingly voted to stay in the European Union. So that's the problem that the Westminster government now faces.
Nicola Sturgeon saying yesterday, Drew Hendry, that it is democratically unacceptable that Scotland could be taken out of the EU against its will. Good morning to you. I assume you agree with that statement.
Well, good morning. Yes, I absolutely agree with that statement. All 32 local authorities, 62% of the vote. It was there's no equivocation. It's very straightforward. There was a will in Scotland that we want to be an outward-looking, modern democratic society that works within Europe, and that's the view of the Scottish people. Well,
it's a view of some of the Scottish people, isn't it? I mean, there were others yesterday saying, what, are we going to leave England and not have them by our side just after leaving the EU? Now, that would be a bit of a shock. What currency are you going to spend?
Well, we're not talking about leaving anywhere. Nicola Sturgeon was showing real leadership yesterday, talking very clearly about looking all the options to make sure that Scotland stayed within the EU. And if necessary, having the ability of being in place before we're dragged out against our will to actually hold a referendum. So, that's what the proposition is. This is a democratic result. It's crystal clear, as Theo said, that Scotland voted that way. And don't forget that we had a manifesto that we ran on for the Scottish Parliament elections, which said if there was a significant material change to what we were told in 2014, such as, and this was very explicit in the manifesto, such as Scotland being taken out of the European Union against its will, then that would give us the ability to trigger the mechanism for another independence referendum.
Absolutely, and Nicola Sturgeon saying that was it is on the table. This is, and she repeated it. She said this is very much on the table. Just talk about practically speaking, between the two countries, a border. That would, I mean, this is the sort of week it has been. I'm envisaging a border now. Can you imagine such a thing?
Well, we had a lot of this in 2014. It was called Project Fear, and we've seen Project Fear during the European referendum as well. It's a law of diminishing returns. What you get is people saying, you can't do this, this is going to happen. And you can see how the public react to this.
Yeah.
Now, there are arrangements all around the place. If you look at Ireland, for example, since 1923, there's been the ability to cross the border there without any European involvement, in those days. So these are things that can be worked out between nation states when they happen. I didn't subscribe all the way through to the European referendum, to the scaremongering that was going on from both sides, I've got to say, which I think left the people across the UK less informed than they would have been. And I think it's incumbent on all of us to make sure that the future arguments we're having are about the actual issues rather than telling people about things they can't do.
But this is from the heart, okay? This is from the heart. Yeah. That you've got we are a united kingdom, and you would be happy if we no longer were. There's nothing Project Fear about that. I'm going home at 10 o'clock this morning. I'm fine. I just think that's a shame. You don't?
Well, I think it's a shame that we won't be able to be in Europe unless we do something about this. We want to be part of the European Union. Now, I've lived and worked in England, for many, many years. I have many friends there. We're not talking about, drilling a great big chasm between, physically kind of separating two nations. That's ridiculous. We'd still be working as friends, neighbours, colleagues, as people have done throughout history. The idea that you're suddenly saying, we're off and we don't want to speak to you is just frankly ludicrous. And, I can't see why that keeps coming up time and time again. There is no way that would happen. We're friends. We're neighbours. We cooperate on things. Just because we would have a different settlement within Europe, it doesn't change that fact.
No. Drew Hendry, thank you very much indeed. He's SNP for Inverness. I'm going to say it again because I love it. It trips off the tongue. Inverness, Nairn, Badenoch and Strathspey. Drew, thank you so much for your time. A last word to you, Theo. Do you think this is going to happen? Do you think there will be another... I know this is a long way hence. Surely it must... Or perhaps it isn't. I mean, perhaps you could give me a timing for this, Theo.
No, I can't. It is going to happen. And I'd imagine Nicola Sturgeon, the way she would want it to happen is that Scotland actually technically never leaves the European Union, because that breakaway happens before Article 50 is implemented. And of course that's the technical mechanism our listeners are going to hear about a lot over the next few days, whereby the United Kingdom leaves the European Union. So that's a 2-year period. So that's going to take 2-year period. That's a 2-year period. And David Cameron he said yesterday, didn't he? He wants that 2-year period to start in October, or shortly after October, once he has left office and his replacement has come in. But of course, the other problem, and this shouldn't be overlooked, is that Jean-Claude Juncker, the President of the European Commission, has said that he now wants Article 50 to be triggered immediately, and that renegotiation to be quick. As he calls it, that divorce to be quick. He said it's not going to be amicable, it's going to be unpleasant, but he wants to get it started right away. He doesn't want that delay.
Well, I don't think he's very amicable or very pleasant either, to be quite honest with you. I thought that was just arrogant and beyond belief yesterday from Mr. Juncker. Anyway, Theo, thank you very much for your time this morning. I know it's another busy day ahead for you. That's LBC's political editor. In the heart of things on College Green in Westminster. It's over to you on 0345 6060 973. Why are we such a divided union? Is there a future for the United Kingdom together, or has the ball started rolling on division in our country? Maybe that's not a bad thing. Lines are open, 0345 6060 973. You'll never guess what's on most of the front pages of the newspaper this morning. I'll take you through that in just a mo. Here's the travel. It's Saturday morning here on LBC.
On LBC.
So, rewind... Andrew Castle here, good morning. Rewind 48 hours or so. If you voted to leave the European Union, would you do it again? Have you had a look at the implications of it now? Do you get it now? And I tell you what, on the other side, do you get this? Or are we sitting here in our little London bubble? And it does look like we should have a moat around London, to be quite honest. If you looked at the maps of the voting, it looks like there should be like a little moat around London. And we'll just kind of like look after it. We'll draw up the drawbridge, because it does appear that we're on a slightly different page in London than everywhere else. So is that what happened? We're very divided, aren't we? How come? 0345 6060 973. We're out. And it's all over the newspapers. Here they are this on Saturday morning. The Times. Picture, obviously, of David Cameron and Samantha Cameron coming out of the door of number 10, just delicately holding hands. And Brexit earthquake. Prime Minister announces resignation. Vote to leave threatens breakup of the United Kingdom. That's what we're talking about this morning. We're talking about the breakup between now and 8. Later on, we'll get into Corbyn, the future of the Conservative Party. Who'll be the next Prime Minister, for God's sake. I mean, how much more can happen in 1 week? Daily Telegraph, same thing. I love this country and I feel honoured to have served it. The catch in the voice I found very touching yesterday, and they've got a picture of Samantha Cameron looking on, genuinely upset as she watches her husband resign his position as Prime Minister of this country. That'll be in October. The Guardian, over, dot, and out. Britain votes for Brexit. Europe tells UK leave now. Blimmin' Juncker. Scotland will go... Honestly, what is he like? Scotland will go it alone. David Cameron resigns. Pound crashes to 30-year low. Johnson and Gove urge calm. Oh, OK. Right. The Sun newspaper. Goodbye, Germany, France and the rest. A new Britain is rising from the shackles. And there's a picture of a Union Jack wrapped up all over the United Kingdom and a chain to Europe and all that sort of... So long, farewell, and Auf Wiedersehen, adieu. Says the Sun. It's quite impressive this morning. Lots of colour on that one. The Daily Mirror, day 1 of Brexit Britain, it says here. So what the hell... This is a very good question. So what the hell happens now is on the front page of the Daily Mirror. Do you know what amazes me is how many people are surprised that this has happened? Not just the pollsters and the bookies and everything else. A lot of people surprised. They've not been listening. You should have been listening to LBC. That's what you should have been doing. We're out of the EU. World's most successful newspaper crusade ends in glorious victory for your Daily Express. Well, blow your own trumpet. Caught out, says the I Weekend. That is a picture of David Cameron on the front of that newspaper. The Daily Mail. It says, take a bow, Britain. It was the day the quiet people of Britain rose up against an arrogant, out-of-touch political class and a contemptuous Brussels elite. There's a lot of truth in that. You cannot deny that. But why have we become so divided? Why is that political elite? Is that what happened? Have we just given the elite a kicking? And who's on the other side of that debate? 2 guys that went to Eton. One of them is going to be Prime Minister, probably. So 2 guys from Eton are sticking up for the downtrodden masses. How bizarre. Where are we? 0345 6060 973. Let's take your calls. Tony is a regular. He's in Liverpool. I'll say good morning to you, Tony. That was a week that was...
It was amazing, Andrew. First off, I've got to congratulate LBC. The coverage has been sensational, honestly. The debate has been unbelievable. Way ahead of the likes of Sky News and BBC. I think you've embarrassed them, and I think it's been superb.
Tony, right there, we're going to clip you up, and we're going to put you on our website. It's lbc.co.uk. We'll pay you for that ad. Cheers, mate.
We are divided, Andrew, and I think basically LBC, the debate showed that. I think we could all see the writing was on the wall, the way London was going to go, the way Scotland was going to go, and the way the rest of the country was going to go. It was entirely predictable. But what I found astonishing was within an hour of the polls closing on the night, Aaron Banks came out, who's the big backer of UKIP and Leave.eu, and he said the result was 52 Leave and 48 to Remain, and everybody poo-pooed it. And we had the conventional posters yet again. They were way, way out of kilter with the reality of it. And Aaron Banks said straight away, within an hour, we've won. And he knew that. He'd taken a sample of 10,000 on the day, telephone poll on the day. He knew exactly where we were, and apparently he was confident all the way along that they were ahead. Even when we were told the polls are way against Leave, swinging in favour of Remain, he said, no, that's not happening. That is not happening.
So, Tony, just why, though? Why have people got it so wrong? Why have the London elite? Why has... I mean, Tony Blair was talking about this as well. Where has the middle ground gone? Where has this polarisation come from? That's what I'm trying to get at this hour.
You've just hit the nail on the head, Andrew. It's because of polarisation. There is no middle ground. So I think we have to be very wary of any polls at all, because I don't think we can take them on face value. Is there a political slant on these and the way they're weighted now? Have they become basically redundant? I mean, is there any future for pollsters anymore? I don't see the relevance in that whatsoever. And we saw the bookies as well on the night. They were saying there's a 90% chance of Remain winning.
Yeah. But guess what? The bookies made a whole load of money.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I follow the money. That is the case. But it's the cynicism around, Andrew, and I think you've touched on it many times on your programmes, and LBC, again, in a wonderful coverage, they've hit on the very same cynicism. People don't believe Cameron, and then Cameron said, no, if you don't believe me, believe my friends. No, people don't believe him or his friends, so nobody believes anybody anymore.
But you know what, Tony? It was like just about every economist, every big business, every global organisation that employs millions, IMF, IFS, Obama, Christine Lagarde, all of that lot, every lovey I could name. I've got a 23-year-old daughter. Her industry is just, is shot to pieces now. They think the young are really, really disappointed. I mean, we don't want to listen to anybody anymore, do we?
Apparently not, Andrew. Apparently not. It's a bizarre situation we're in now, but the middle ground has been vacated.
Middle ground.
Yeah, and people have just dashed off to the left and to the right, and, apparently, like, the middle ground is nobody's now, but nobody seems to want it.
Yeah, well, we can have a go, Tony. We should seize power. There'll be a coup d'etat. We'll take the middle ground. Tony, good talking to you. Thanks, mate. Thomas is in Glasgow. Good morning to you, Thomas.
Good morning, Andrew. Initially, I would like to echo your previous caller. LBC has been outstanding in covering this. It's been on constantly in the house and in my car.
Thomas, we're going to clip you up and stick you on the website as well. This is marvellous if everybody starts with agreement.
Outstanding, but I'm really, really getting fed up with Jimmy Cranky. She has got delusions of adequacy.
You're not talking about Nicola Sturgeon, are you?
I'm afraid I am. She's got delusions of adequacy. Angela Merkel, she ain't, much as she wants to be and thinks she is. She would have been better advised keeping her powder dry for a couple of weeks. She's been gunning for a second independence referendum for any excuse. If she'd waited 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks till the initial fallout settles down just slightly, she says she wants to go into the EU. What EU is she going to go into? Because the immediate fallout from this is Austria, Sweden, Netherlands, etc. are looking to possibly ask for a referendum themselves. The EU itself is unstable. And again, she thinks it's her game and she's in charge. She's not. It's up to Westminster to give her the referendum, and she's had one. And the mandate was in that referendum that there was a EU referendum with the option of voting out. So we all knew that was on the table. The other thing is, on what terms will the EU accept Scotland in to whatever remnants is left of the EU? Will it be a new country that she's saying, yeah, we'll go in as part of the EU as an existing state? I don't see that happening. And they will want to. They want what's left of the EU to be the same. They won't allow an independent Scottish currency or the terms that the UK have just now. It's just right. Let's go now for the independence referendum. It's the one thing that she's interested in, and the one thing that England don't realise. Have a look at Nicola Sturgeon's constituency. It's a shambles.
Thomas?
There's more. Yep.
Yeah, no, I've got to cut you off there because we're just going to pop away to the news. You got me thinking this morning about the timing of this whole thing. But I mean, the question when it comes to Scotland, is it democratically unacceptable that Scotland could be taken out of the EU against its will? I think it probably is, but I mean her timing is certainly open to question. Thomas, thank you very much indeed. Thought-provoking stuff. 7:30 is the time. We'll continue our debate. Why are we so divided? Is there a future for the United Kingdom? It's a big question. Help me answer it here on LBC 0345 6060 973. Let's have a look at the news. Rupert Bartia, good morning.
Morning. The UK has had its credit.
It was always David Cameron's wish that his party would stop banging on about Europe, because a question just popped into my mind. Why did we have this referendum in the first place? Whose decision was that? Was that just to resolve his own personal issues in the party, or the actual party itself had to sort itself out? They've been tearing themselves to pieces. We'll talk about Corbyn later on. There's this no confidence motion has been tabled against him, and Margaret Hodge has had some strong things to say about him. So we'll do both sides of this argument. But in the meantime, why are we such a divided union? Why are we such a divided nation? What is the matter? Where is the middle ground? Has anybody got the middle ground here? I see a political opportunity for myself. I'm going to get into the middle ground, and I'm going to be all things to all people. I'm going to get voted in. I'm going to be Prime Minister. Excellent. On the way, we're going to talk to a policy writer who was once David Cameron's absolute favourite, Philip Blond, a little bit later on. He's got some interesting observations on what has been a momentous week. And was it without... Well, I thought Nigel Farage was a little without grace, to be quite honest. He was a little triumphalist a couple of times. I wasn't too pleased with that. I thought, Michael Gove and Boris Johnson sort of struck the right tone. And then, just when I just sort of had enough yesterday, and then Juncker comes on. Juncker. He came on and just dismisses the British people with a bit of a smirk. He says, well, it's got to happen quickly. This Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty, the formal beginning of the negotiation period, probably starting in October, going to take 2 years, going to take ages. But Juncker comes on and then says, I don't know what. Do you know what? I don't even give a damn what he said. How dare you dismiss what we have all said? Whether I said it or not is not the point. But we spoke and you dismiss it. There is exactly the problem with the perception of the European Union. Some guy wearing a suit we didn't vote for standing there and dismissing us, this island nation that's won 2 world wars and been a beacon for years. It actually made me feel like flipping to the other side. 0345 6060 973. Don't smirk at me from Europe when you're in pieces in 5 years' time and we started it. Meantime, gas is going to go up. Holidaymakers are confused. The young feel completely betrayed. They're going to be marching on the streets within days. Honestly, it was momentous. And we've lost a prime minister as well. What are we going to do with that? Might need a new leader of the opposition as well. 0345 6060 973. Let's talk. Ben is in Haringey. Hello, Ben.
Hello, thanks for taking my call.
Welcome.
The Project Fear has now become Project Reality. And the main thing I feel disappointed about, I voted Remain. And I'm no spring chicken. But we let the young people of this country down. They will now have to get visas to travel. They will also have to get...
Do we know that?
...to work. Yes, I think that will happen. It's bound to happen.
No, yes, I can't remember what it was like before, Ben. I can't remember. I was thinking that the other day. So when I go to Spain on my holiday and I fly my 2 hours and 10 minutes and I get off and it's boiling hot and there's one bloke standing there, are we just going to be able to go straight through, or are we going to have to stop with visas and all that?
The travel part of it is less important. The important part is the wide opportunities that young people would have had if it remained to get work in Europe and work anywhere in Europe without having the hassle of going through all the normal things that you have to go through.
Yeah.
We've let them down. And also, it's gradually starting to happen now where food, the essentials for life, will go through the roof because...
imported goods are going to cost more, but why would food go through the roof? Just those that are exposed to foreign currency?
Well, there's 2 reasons to that. It's not so much the foreign currency. There's 2 reasons for that. Is that the farmers' subsidies were quite high, and therefore they'll have to, if they want to survive, they will have to be priced up. They won't have any choice. Plus, a lot of the European workers that were working in the fields, which nobody wanted to do because it was backbreaking, are going to be affected by that. So therefore, the labour that they normally use, the price will go up. So therefore, everything on that side will go up.
But
Petrol will go up.
Ben, can I just ask something? Because I don't know the answer. There's so many questions and so few answers at the moment. What happens to people from the EU who are working here? We were told beforehand, and you can say Project Fear on both sides, Ben, we were told beforehand there's more than 50,000 people doing important jobs in the NHS who are from the EU or elsewhere. What is actually going to happen to them? Have you actually read anything, or have you just got an opinion on this?
No, I've read some bits and pieces about it because I'm interested in it.
Because I don't know the answer to that, and I've read tons of it.
Well, the one I've read says that there'll be a time limit on people that came from Europe. They would have to be in the country for a certain amount of years before they would have the right to remain here and not be have to leave. Of course, that will. It's so uncertain. Everything is uncertain. It's like throwing some balls up in the air, and hoping the security is gone. Moody's have reduced our credit rating, so therefore we have to borrow money, we'll have to pay more for it, so that has a knock-on effect. I mean, it's all up in the air.
Ben?
But the main thing, I think we've let young people down.
Yeah, Ben, it's a very strong point. If you are a young person, I don't know, let's call that mid-20s or beneath, 18 to 24 or so, you voted. If you were 18 to 24, you voted. 75% of you, 3/4 of you, voted to stay in the European Union. And have we let you down? I mean, it has crossed my mind. My 23-year-old was very upset when and I was, really? I was surprised by that. Had to reassure her whether she actually listened or not. Her particular industry is drama, creative and all that. And she thinks that, mind you, they are all very, very Europe-oriented. Certainly they're a left-wing bunch, the young in London in particular. But they're just amazed that the rest of the country has said, no, we want to go. Sam is in Farnham in Surrey. Good morning to you, Sam.
Good morning, Andrew. I am a great admirer of you, especially when you commentate on tennis. So,
well, that'll be on Monday, Sam. It's all going to be a bit mundane after all this, I feel.
Okay, let's switch to politics now.
Go on then.
The young people have to learn that the people of Britain have spoken, and 4 percentage points are a good percentage points, particularly with fear-mongering and all sorts of things about our future, about jobs, etc., and the economy and so on. And we get 4 percentage points is quite a good win. Now, we were in the 70s when that was voted on. We were young people, you and I, and then, and today they have to understand that democracy overrides. Now, what we need to do is to look forward now. The first thing we need to say to Europe that our parliament will override any decisions that are made by Brussels. That's number one. Number two, security. Do you want us to carry on cooperating on security, or do you want to have a different arrangement? I think they will agree with us, particularly in the view of what happened in Belgium and France recently, that it would be good for everybody to cooperate on security. Now, there are 2 more issues. The control of immigration, it is not immigration, it's control of immigration. What skill sets do we have here in our country? Which ones do we need? Where do we need to get them from? Is it from Europe or is it from the rest of the world? And we need to look at that and populate those skill sets that we don't have.
When do you think this is all going to happen, Sam? I mean, we can't just do this overnight. I mean, one of the problems is uncertainty stretching forward so many years. Business hates uncertainty.
I agree with you, and that's why the Conservatives, as they are now the ruling party, they need to get those who voted or wanted Brexit to sit down and study this before Cameron goes. And if the people have spoken, our job as politicians is to do what they wanted from us to do in the best possible way in favor of our government and for our people. So that is the job of the politicians. And also, the job of the media is to reflect how people feel rather than tell them what to say or this is the way you're going to go. And I think that has changed so much. And that's why we have what we think is surprises. We've seen it in the Corbyn election. And by the way, Corbyn has nothing to do with what happened. It was David Cameron that won the election on the promise of, I'm going to give you a referendum. Second, he said, I'm going to get a good deal that you cannot refuse.
Well, Sam, we are going to talk about that, actually. We're going to talk about whether he negotiated hard enough or whether Europe completely, back in February, wasn't it, or Europe completely underestimated the strength of feeling in the United Kingdom when it came to actually leaving the European Union. If Cameron had come home with some sort of a concessions on what was bothering the British people, would the referendum result have been the same as this? We're going to pose that question. And actually, who should be the next Prime Minister. I mean, we've got to get our teeth around that one at some point. It's interesting. I'm going to come to your call just in a couple of minutes' time, David, in Romford. I'm going to pose the question before we head off to the travel here. Just, why are we so divided? Why did, for instance, the pollsters, the bookies and everybody else get this so wrong? When I went to bed, I don't know, 11:30 or 12. It was after the Sunderland result. I did my best. Look, I'd had a couple of glasses and there's no way I was beginning to dribble. So I had to go. But when I saw that Sunderland result come in, I thought, that was absolutely one-sided. So when did the politicians, and if you want to call it the elite, when did business leaders, when did they become so divorced from the reality of the feelings of you out there, right? The great unwashed we all are, OK? I'm lucky enough to have a voice. You are here on LBC. 0345 6060 973. When did we all become so divided? Travel next, 7:45 Saturday morning.
LBC.
Sun came up this morning, came up the other day as well, even though we were out of Europe. Sun came up. Grass is still growing. Wimbledon's on Monday, and the dog still needs to go for a pee. So don't worry, everything's okay. We are still revolving. The planet is okay, although we've fallen off the EU. Is that a good thing or a bad thing that we are so divided now? Is that the lesson that we should learn? When are we going to actually listen to each other instead of throwing sound bites? That's the thing, isn't it? 0345 6060 973. David is in Romford. Very good morning to you.
Good morning. I'm so very disappointed. I voted Remain, but I'm disappointed that we're out of this club. I mean, how do we English people actually live with ourselves, with the forget about all the other divides amongst the nations, but just think about the internal, generational divide that we've created with our young people. I mean, they lost out on the property. Now we've actually robbed them from their future.
I think that's overstating it. Some people would say, and in fact the majority in this country who voted, 72% turnout, said that we've given them their future back.
How do you see that? I mean, when I was young, I always realised that whenever I went to work in Germany, Holland, all over Germany, Poland, I could go there, go back, get on the Ryanair, £10 tickets. And I got injured, went to hospital, could book here, book there to get a property here or a property there to rent. It was easy. It was like just going to Birmingham or something.
Well, do you think that we've erected some great big sort of gates and walls now? Do you think we're going to build walls and we're not going to be able to travel and go? What did we do before all this was before there was sort of free movement? We still went places and did things.
It was a lot more difficult, but I can hear in the tone of your voice that you haven't considered all those obstacles.
I haven't what?
Your daughter said to you, you're not considering the obstacles that we had. Even your daughter says to you, do you see how upset they are? I've got 3 children. Mm-hmm. One of my children is a linguist, Spanish linguist. Now, she was always going backwards and forwards, going around. I think it's criminal what we've done, and it's inconsiderate what we've done.
Yeah, but something that, just 1 second, David, I think that your attitude, I mean, if you don't mind me saying so, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, there is an arrogance to your attitude, because the people have spoken, and that is fantastic, isn't it? To have a voice. There's plenty of countries in the world that don't. We've spoken, and you have to accept the result and stop whinging about it.
Okay, well, you say the people have spoken. If the people had spoken, genuinely had spoken, then I would, and genuinely, in other words, the programme that was put to us, the manifesto that was put to us was honest and true, then I would accept it. But it hasn't, and that's why the young people...
If you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat both imposters just the same. Mate, I went around the world playing an individual sport. When you lose, you lay your head on the pillow and you say, we lost, and you have to move on and get over it and make the best of what you think is a bad job, but other people think is quite a good job.
Well, the young people don't think that. And like I said, the lies
tough.
that was told... Well, you say tough, but look at what the manifesto... It wasn't a manifesto, was it?
There is no manifesto.
Yeah, well, it should have been. And that's a whole...
We're voting on one single question.
Which was?
Which was Remain or not?
Based on what?
Based on whatever that meant to everybody.
Lies. And the young people have realised they've been conned.
Okay, so David, thank you very much indeed. We don't mind getting heated about this. This is a big debate. Appreciate your call. I hope we speak again. Let's talk to Philip Blunt now. He's a policy writer, once called David Cameron's favourite policy writer. In fact, he's done a whole load besides. Have a bit of a Google of Philip, and you'll see exactly what I mean. We're talking about really the future of the Tory leadership. Who's going to be the next Prime Minister? I suppose what next for David Cameron as well. Philip, very good morning to you. He had to go, didn't he?
Yes, I think he did have to go, and I think he went in a very honourable fashion, and he recognised that there was a vote for Brexit, felt he couldn't, in his heart, kind of negotiate on behalf of that for the new deal with the EU, if indeed one is possible, so he went, and now it's all up for grabs, and Boris Johnson is clearly the heir apparent, with Michael Gove as the putative Chancellor, and it's all change, and it's all quite extreme, really.
Philip, I don't know whether you heard. I think it was David before, and we were sort of half arguing about that. We still get on. We accept each other's opinions, but the young feel quite angry about this, don't they? And I think there's going to be more and more as the dust settles in the weeks to come. But I think it's important that the losing side accept that they lost and move on. So I think that was a good example from Cameron.
I think it was, but I think there are clearly issues to confront. I think calls for a second referendum will grow simply because you've got two elements. There will be a whole element of buyer's remorse, if you like, that because, as your previous caller said, we don't know the terms which are going to emerge. We don't know the deal that's going to be struck. So there is a sense in which what might emerge actually could be far, far worse than we have. And there is a sense, I think, that should that be the case, should people realise what they've done, we've already lost so much money.
But Philip, that wasn't a dress rehearsal. That was the real thing. I mean, it couldn't have been made.
Agree with you.
No, I know you. I know you do. I'm just sort of making the point because I've seen the petition online.
It's happened before in Europe, at least 3 times, where as a result of a referenda, reality changes and there's another referendum and people's opinions change. I mean, what if, for example, the majority view decisively shifted after we've seen the social and economic cost and people actually wanted a new deal? And what if, for instance, Europe itself accepted free movement is too destabilising and itself made a new offer? So if there was a new offer from Europe and a new recognition in the country that actually we want to rethink, and with a new offer we can rethink, I think there's perfect grounds for looking at it again, and I wouldn't be surprised if that happened. That's what I'm saying to you. I really wouldn't be surprised. Well, take another scenario. Boris Johnson gets selected, so we've got rid of unrepresentative power in Brussels, and we now have unrepresentative power in Westminster. He himself will want a democratic mandate. He goes for an early election, which I think he will. Then you have, let's say the Labour Party do the sensible thing and get rid of Jeremy Corbyn and have a believable leader. And the Labour Party then stands on a clear we're not going to table Article 50. We're not going to leave the European Union. We have a general election, and the party that says we're not going to trigger Article 50 wins. Then they have a democratic mandate actually not to leave the European Union.
I see.
So I think it's all up for grabs, and I suspect that is a scenario that could well happen.
Philip, how fascinating. And do you think Boris Johnson is odds on? Do you expect him to be Prime Minister?
It's a very good question. Before this vote, Boris Johnson is actually not particularly popular amongst MPs in Westminster. And under the Tory rules for leadership, the MPs select 2 candidates that then go to the party membership at large. Yeah. Before the Brexit vote, I would say that Boris Johnson hadn't had a particularly glorious re-entry to Parliament and would not have made the last 2. Now I think it's inevitable he will make the last 2. And Boris Johnson, while not popular with MPs, is popular with the party. So I find it hard to see how on earth he could be stopped. So I suspect Boris Johnson will indeed be our next Prime Minister.
Lovely to talk to you this morning. That's Philip Blond with some strong views. The possibility, how about that? The possibility of a second referendum. Look, I think I can pop it in into my diary next Friday. I wonder, should we have another crack at all this? Have we made some terrible mistake? We do feel very divided now. Can you imagine that? A call from Caroline now in Chelsea. Good morning to you, Caroline. Hello.
Oh, I'm here. Hello.
Hello, Caroline.
I don't usually make these phone calls because I find my blood pressure goes up. I'm stressed.
Everything's fine. We're having a lovely chat.
I'm so wound up, and I'm wound up about the kind of really vitriolic attitude from the Stay campaign and people that support the Stay.
Yes.
It's like the basics of democracy is majority rules, right?
Yes.
The British have spoken. Why is everyone being so vitriolic and ugly and not sweet about it?
People don't like losing.
But the majority have ruled exactly what you said to that other guy.
Yeah.
I have a home. I live between France, Italy and here, okay? I wanted in. And if I'm honest, that was for quite selfish reasons. My mum lives in Ireland. There's all kinds of reasons why I would want to be in, and I wanted to stay in. But equally, I'm fine about us leaving. We are British. We're a very strong nation. And I think with the, the Out campaign? No, the In campaign. There was too much talk of immigration, too much racist kind of connotations. And the fact is, I think we're British people. We are very tolerant and we don't care where anyone is from.
Carol, on that conciliatory note, we are going to leave that hour. Thank you very much for your contributions. This is LBC, Andrew Castle here. The Brexit effect. The Prime Minister resigned. Jeremy Corbyn could be ousted. Our union is shaky. All in 24 hours. Amazing. Are you a Labour supporter? I'd love to hear from you after 9. What needs to change?
The idea that the things that Jeremy Corbyn said and did were going to bring back these working class voters is just not on.
Who should lead Labour? That's for later on. Right now, though, what does the future look like for the Conservative Party?
I love this country, and I feel honoured to have served it.
So who do you want to see at the helm next? Aisha Hazarika, former advisor to Ed Miliband, and Harry Harman joins me for the paper review. There is much to talk about. Call me 0345 6060 973. Who would you have as the next PM? Busy old week, wasn't it? The Prime Minister has resigned. Jeremy Corbyn could be ousted. Our union is shaky. We've already spoken about that. This is all in 24 hours. Moody's has now downgraded the UK's credit rating outlook to negative. And I wonder, from 9 o'clock this morning, if you are a Labour supporter, if you'd like to get involved in our chat. We're just asking what needs to change. Maybe nothing. Happy to hear from you. Who should lead Labour? Now, though, what does the future look like for the Conservative Party? Who do you want to see at the helm? Just over a year since they won a general election. Cameron has gone. Aisha Hazarika, former advisor to Ed Miliband, and Harriet Harman joins me for the paper review. We have a lot to talk about. Call me 0345 6060 973. Andrew Castle with you through until 10 o'clock this morning. This is from one of the investment houses, Brewin Dolphin in London. The momentous decision by the UK to vote to leave the European Union, popularly known as Brexit, is a step into the unknown. No joke. I wonder if we should have known more beforehand. Isn't it our obligation to actually find out more beforehand? Was there a manifesto to get your teeth into? No, there wasn't. We have voted. There seems to be a big division now. Very important, in my opinion, that those who were on the wrong side of this referendum now accept that they were defeated, move on and learn lessons. I come from a sporting background. It's what you have to do. It is reality and we have to deal with it. But, what about David Cameron's decision to step down as Prime Minister? Talk about an unstable country just at the moment. It does feel a little bit shaky, doesn't it? Perhaps we have nothing to worry about. Everything will be fine in the end. I did note, by the way, that the sun has actually risen the last 2 days, and panic doesn't suit anybody. This is what David Cameron had to say yesterday. It was a tumultuous morning. This was not long after 8 o'clock, yesterday morning.
I was absolutely clear about my belief that Britain is stronger, safer and better off inside the European Union. And I made clear the referendum was about this and this alone, not the future of any single politician, including myself. But the British people have made a very clear decision to take a different path. And as such, I think the country requires fresh leadership to take it in this direction. I will do everything I can as Prime Minister to steady the ship over the coming weeks and months. But I do not think it would be right for me to try to be the captain that steers our country to its next destination. This is not a decision I've taken lightly, but I do believe it's in the national interest to have a period of stability and then the new leadership required. There is no need for a precise timetable today, but in my view we should aim to have a new Prime Minister in place by the start of the Conservative Party conference in October. Delivering stability will be important, and I will continue in post as Prime Minister with my Cabinet for the next 3 months.
So who would you have as the next leader of the Conservative Party? Who should be the next Prime Minister? It's the question that we're posing this hour. 0345 6060 973. This was a man who won a majority in a general election just over a year before that speech, and now gone. I mean, who would be in politics? I'm sure he'll feel personally a great weight off his shoulders when it's gone, because it is a tough job, OK? Stop banging on about Europe is something that he famously once said, David Cameron, and perhaps the party will now. We'll see. Now, if I was going for a job and I saw a panel of my next guests in front of me, I'd be extremely nervous. They are Lord Norman Tebbit, a former Cabinet Minister, of course, under Margaret Thatcher. Sir Malcolm Rifkind is with us, a former Foreign Secretary, the Conservative MP for Kensington. And in a few minutes' time, Lord Tim Bell will be joining us, who's a former very close advisor to Margaret Thatcher. In fact, ran her 1979 campaign, chair of Bell Pottinger Public Relations Company, and a very important man in that world. So a very good morning to one and all. Lord Norman Tebbit, if I could turn to you first and just say, who do you think should be next?
Next what?
Prime Minister, leader of the Conservative Party.
I think that's got to be decided yet. The candidates haven't all come forward, possible candidates. I don't know. At this moment, I'd want to hear what they have to say.
Yeah. An outstanding drama just lately, though, Lord Tebbit. You've seen a few things in your time. This was as dramatic as it gets, is it not?
Yes, I suppose it was, really. A lot of it has confirmed my beliefs that I built up over many years about the European Union. We've seen that today with Juncker declaring that the negotiations for British exit must start today. Now, jump to it. I am the chief of the Commission. British government hasn't applied to leave. Parliament hasn't discussed the matter. What's the matter with him?
Well, it was
Why doesn't everybody calm down? I mean, we know that the European Commission takes the view that they don't have to obey the law. Everybody else does, but not them, which is exactly why people voted to leave.
Yes.
They can't learn a lesson, can they?
No, Lord Tebbit, we actually discussed that in the last hour, and I was talking about Juncker's attitude. It's exactly what sort of riles and gets our backs up. Can I just return to the...
He says that we're deserters and we will be dealt with. It sounds like a sort of Erzatz comic opera, music hall imitation German, doesn't he?
Lord Tebbit, do you think there will be a domino effect? I know they're rubbing their hands in glee in the Netherlands, perhaps in France. They're all sort of chomping at the bit to have a go at leaving, are they not?
Well, not necessarily. What they are hoping is that this will precipitate the sort of reform in the European Union which we hoped for and could not achieve. Maybe if the Commission learns its lessons. They're presiding now over a Europe which is in grave danger of breakup, not because of British leaving, but because of youth unemployment in Greece, Spain and Italy, 40, 50%. The economy in Greece flat, impossible levels of debt to repay, and yet they insist on going on in the same way.
Lord Tebbett, I'm going to let you go. Thank you very much indeed for your contribution this morning on LBC. Sir Malcolm Rifkin is with us as well. Very good morning to you,
good morning.
Sir Malcolm. I wonder if we could talk specifically about the question I'm trying to address this morning. And we're talking about the future of the Conservative Party particularly. The position of Prime Minister up for grabs. I mean, this is a big prize indeed. Can I ask you, do you think Boris Johnson is up to that job?
I think that's what he's going to have to demonstrate over the next few weeks and months. The Prime Minister's job is the most difficult in the land, particularly over the next 2 or 3 years. Boris's experience has not been in government. He's never been a minister. He was a good mayor of London, but the mayor of London didn't run London. The boroughs run London, apart from the underground and transport. So I think Boris has to demonstrate if he wants this job. I mean, he's got a good claim to the leadership in the sense that he was, for all practical purposes, the leader of the Brexit campaign. They won that campaign. He clearly is a pretty impressive political operator. But you need more than a political operator to be Prime Minister. Isn't it extraordinary that the kicking that the political elite, business elite, economists, foreign politicians, the kicking delivered to them by the working class and those who are jolly cross about their lot in life, those people are now being represented by two old Etonians. It is extraordinary with Michael Gove and Boris Johnson. Yes. Well, the one thing you can't say about Boris Johnson is that he's not a member of the establishment. But the same is true in America. Donald Trump is a multimillionaire claiming to be the leader of a populist revolution. And in a sense, that's irrelevant. What we had in the United Kingdom, and I was very disappointed by the result. I think it was a very, very sad day. However, I acknowledge you had a remarkable expression of how healthy a democracy the United Kingdom is. Here are 33 million people. They came out peacefully, they voted, and they reached a conclusion which everyone has accepted. And there are no huge crowds in the streets, even the people who won. In many countries, you'd have tens of thousands of people demonstrating in Trafalgar Square, demonstrating in the streets. We're not that sort of country. People realize it's a pretty sober moment, even if you were pleased with the outcome of the division that took place. Lord Tim Bell joins us now, former very close advisor to Margaret Thatcher, ran her 1979 campaign, so knows how to get the job done. Did you think, good morning to you, did you think that the right tone was struck by Gove and Johnson, and actually Gisela Stewart, but particularly Gove and Johnson, when victory was theirs?
Yes, I think they did. They stood up and did the job very well indeed. I think that they were calm, and they were talking about reuniting the country, which is sensible. And I think they were being very rational. And were you surprised by the result in the first place, or did you see this one coming? I must admit I saw it on a knife edge, and it could go either way. So I was, although I was a supporter of leaving the European Union and have been for years, I was pleased by the result, but I'm now excited by the future. And we're at the stage where, for the next 6 months or so, to use the analogy of the divorce, which Juncker insisted on using, we're in the period when the two sides organise their departure. I think the most important thing is to resist these calls by unelected officials to press the exit button immediately. They're not being rational, they're being emotional, and they're being very stupid. Fortunately, we don't have to press the exit button straight away. We're entitled, absolutely legal to take our time over it, and we must do so. I'm going to ask the same question to you both, if that's all right, and I'll start with you, Lord Bell. What does it take to get the job done to become the leader of the Conservative Party, in your opinion, in these circumstances, based on both of your sets of experiences, which is absolutely vast? But what's it going to take for one of them to come on through? And I assume it'll be either Gove or Johnson. Well, I don't think you're right to assume it'll be either Gove or Johnson. I don't think we know at the moment who will be the two people on the shortlist that's put to the membership. What it takes is an attitude of mind that understands what the British people have decided, and to implement that decision. And that means, as best possible, an exit from the European Union, and then stability for Britain, and being run as an independent country. And Sir Malcolm Rifkin? Well, the best person who's actually qualified at the moment is not one of the two names you've mentioned, it's Theresa May.
the Home Secretary. She has been a superb Home Secretary for probably the best we've had for a very long period of time, for the last 6 years. She actually, although she supported Remain, she's been pretty well known as a Eurosceptic for a long time, and would, I think, be acceptable to a broad mass of the people. Now, I'm not saying I'm calling for her or supporting her. I don't know at this stage, but I think she certainly has to be one of the serious contenders if she is interested in putting herself forward.
And is she popular enough in the party?
Well, you see, that's the dreadful question that people ask. If this is just a popularity stake, we'll end up with somebody who's popular and may turn out to be a lousy prime minister. We've got to grow up. We've got to have a maturity. In the old days, it was the members of Parliament themselves who chose the party leader. And of course, you want a leader who can win an election. But, Margaret Thatcher never wanted to be popular. She wanted to win elections based on her competence and her ability.
Okay, so listen, both of you... Sorry to interrupt. Both of you have absolutely been there for decades. Who do you think is best qualified? I mean, you might not want to nail your colours to the mast, but who is best qualified to be our... We need some leadership in this country now. We want to be led at this point. There's a lot of people, including the young, including my daughter, who are feeling very destabilised at the moment. Who is best qualified? That's it. Who is best qualified to be the next Prime Minister? Sir Malcolm.
Well, I don't think you should ask that question and expect to announce 24 hours after David Cameron's announcement. The whole point of the next couple of months is to actually come to a sensible judgment on that very, very question. Yep. The person who has the best qualifications today, for the reasons I mentioned earlier, is Theresa May, because she's Home Secretary, she's been a senior minister, which none of the other possible names come up to. But that doesn't necessarily mean she's the right person for the future. So I think it's for Boris Johnson or anybody else who wants to be considered. They have to demonstrate by the way they address these issues, by the way they speak, not just to their own party, but to the wider public, because there'll be a lot of the public who will resent the fact that here we have the need for a new Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, and at the end of the day it's going to be party activists in one political party who appoint the Prime Minister. The Queen won't have a choice. The public won't have a choice. No, I'm not complaining about that procedure. The Conservatives won the election. That's the way we do it. And it would be same would have been true if it had been the Labour Party or any other party. But the person who is going to be Britain's Prime Minister, not just a Conservative Prime Minister, has to speak not just to party activists, has to speak to the wider public. And the party activists have to listen to how the public judge the various individuals who might be putting themselves forward.
Sir Malcolm, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Last word to you, Lord Bell. Same question, really. Best qualifications?
Well, at the moment, the person who has the best qualification is Boris Johnson, because he led the Leave campaign, and therefore he's in tune with the majority of the British people. But the issue of popularity in the parliamentary party is a real issue, and it's something that matters. And how people conduct themselves during the process of the 1922 committee adoption of candidates, and then subsequently the appeal to the membership of the Tory party, is going to be the critical factor. I would put my money on Boris Johnson. I suspect the alternative candidate probably won't be Theresa May, but it could be, and that would be a very interesting contest. But the most important, as you said, Andrew, is that we need a leader. We've always needed a leader. We needed a leader for the last few years as well, and we didn't have one. There's no doubt that the most successful leader was Margaret Thatcher. Her qualities were not well known when she got the leadership. She was a junior minister in the sense she was education, nothing much more. She came from outside up against the conventional candidates, and I think we're in much the same situation again.
Lord Bell, sorry, Lord Bell, I've got to cut off. We've got to pop off to the travel now, but just came to mind, what about the Education Secretary, Nicky Morgan, if we're looking for... It was slightly on the outside. Comes from investment banking background, isn't she? Is it feasible for her? Let's open it up to you. 0345 6060 973. Who could lead this country next? We'll take a look at the travel. It's 8:20.
This is LBC.
All those jobs that we were warned that we might lose, one of them, in the event of us leaving the European Union, one of them is to be filled. Probably by, it has to be by October, doesn't it? The Conservative Party. One is the position of head of the Conservative Party. There's going to be a new Prime Minister, of course, and I wonder who you think that should be. 0345 6060 973. It's quite a simple question, really. Do you think that he went out with honour, David Cameron, yesterday? I thought he certainly, when his voice caught, I think people... do you know what? Reminds me of Andy Murray when he lost that Wimbledon final in 2012. Nobody really knew him before that, and there was that little sort of squeak in the voice. And suddenly we went, oh. So anyway, he's gone. Who's next? Over to you, 0345 6060 973. Aisha Hazarika is with us this morning, former advisor to Ed Miliband, Harriet Harman. She's got her own show going on tomorrow night, which she's having to rewrite, because you're a stand-up, aren't you?
Yeah, who knew I was a comedian before I joined politics? Seriously. Yeah, so
Did you write jokes for Ed Miliband?
I did. Tried.
How?
Tried.
Dear Ed, he was on here the other day.
Bless him.
He doesn't tell a joke easily, does he?
He's actually, naturally very warm, and a lot of people can be very funny and very, very nice guy. I think there was obviously, he just didn't sort of connect that well, bless him.
Did you write the line, hell yes, I'm tough enough?
No, that actually just was completely spontaneous, because we were watching it in the green room and everyone was like, whoa, where did that come from? Because we had prepped literally every single other line. We were like, whoa. But then, do you know the worst thing is we all got T-shirts made.
Hell yes, I'm tough
Somebody,
enough.
as a joke in the office, made these hell yeah T-shirts, which suddenly fell very flat when we didn't win the general election.
Well, there was
it was a bit like...
And the bloke who won... just a little over a year later, has gone. And that should anger the electorate, shouldn't it?
Well, it has been the most seismic couple of days, not just in British history, but I think across the world people are sort of looking at us. And I was just saying to you, I was actually with David Cameron on Wednesday, the day before the referendum. We were on the sort of cross-party bus touring around the southwest, doing a really hard last push on campaigning. And it's incredibly interesting because he was a man. It was like it was the last day of a general election. That was the intensity of it. And you sort of saw in his eyes he was a kind of a man fighting for his political life. He was definitely quite... he's very relaxed anyway. I mean, he's very affable, but there was a definite nerviness about him. But weirdly, his team were very confident. His team around him, his top team, the press advisors, the sort of operations people said, you know what, we've been out with him for a long time. We know how things are. We're going to win this. And they didn't. Didn't
pan out that way. Paul Embarking, good morning to you. Who's next? Who would you like to see as Prime Minister?
Yeah, morning, Andrew. I think with Cameron, what he done was he done himself. When he got the deal, the so-called deal from Brussels, if he would have kept an impartial view from the start, then I think he could have, if he would have stayed or gone, basically he could have carried on with the PM job. I'll give you an example. Harold Wilson, back in 1975, he done that. There was a deal, he said, well, I'm a bit, with the deal itself, you can go with it or not. I'll let my cabinet argue about it. I'll let the country argue about it. Whatever decision is made, fair enough.
Okay. And, you're telling me that it would have been better if it had less of an opinion?
With him, he got too involved. He got the Bank of England and all these other experts come out, but he got too deeply involved in it with his Project Fear and whatever. So I don't think he'd done himself any favours whatsoever. I say if he'd done an impartial view, let the country decide. We're not stupid, but the whole campaign, he portrayed the country as a little bit stupid. You don't really know what way to go. So I'm going to push this agenda for you to stay in. So he basically, if the vote went against him, which it did,
Paul?
he ended up, he had nowhere else to go.
Who's next?
Who I think's next?
Yeah.
Right. They say the country's split. This has got to be agreed on here. It's not split, and people say, well, it's not. London live in their own little bubble. Yeah, everything's doing well in their lives and stuff. So they live in their European bubble and they're doing business and doing whatever, and they're doing well in their lives. Scotland, the only reason why Scotland voted to stay in, my opinion, is because they get a lot of EU funding for projects. If they said before this vote, say, I tell you what, Scotland, you will definitely get the same amount of funding.
Paul?
We'll give it.
Who?
If we leave Europe, they would have probably voted to stay in.
Paul,
they would have voted.
I'm glad you're getting it off your chest, and I love it. And we've spoken before. You're brilliant. But who should be the next Prime Minister? You got one word. Then I'm going to Francis in Manchester, whether you say it or not. Who's next for the Prime Minister?
Okay,
come on, one word.
Boris Johnson.
All right, mate. Cheers. Let's catch up again soon. Thank you, Francis in Manchester. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Great to speak with you.
Very nice to speak with you.
Thank God Almighty, free at last. Thank God Almighty.
Is that right? So you're an outer then?
Oh, definitely was. I was campaigning for Vote Leave. It was no tomorrow.
Were you actually campaigning? Did you feel like you were going to win? Be honest with me.
Well, so my colleague said we would win, but I feared that we wouldn't.
Well, you did win, and now the look on Michael Gove's face, the look on Gisela Stewart's face, the look on Boris Johnson's face was quite interesting. It was like, oh, God. There was a little bit of, what are we going to do now?
Well, I'll be quite honest. In either way, I think we need... by the way, I think Michael Gove should be PM, Prime Minister next. Although Boris is a lovable, cheeky chappy. You know, I think Michael Gove has shown great poise and great conviction. OK, he lacks maybe in personality, but he certainly knows what he's talking about.
OK, so Michael Gove for you. Francis, thank you very much indeed, and congratulations on winning. The time is 8:30. Aisha Hazarika shortly will take us through a couple of the stories in the newspaper. We'll take the news next with Rupert Bhatia. 8:33 is the time. Andrew through until 10 o'clock this morning. Guess what we're talking about? Well, yes, it's the fallout. And who's going to be the next Prime Minister of this country? Who is the future of the Conservative Party? Very interesting talking to Sir Malcolm Rifkin to start this hour, and Lord Tebbit as well, and also Sir Tim Bell Pottinger, who ran the 1979 Thatcher campaign and was instrumental in that. Theresa May was obviously one suggestion. I didn't hear any great cheerleading for Boris Johnson, which surprised me. We've already had somebody on the phone saying Michael Gove should be the next Prime Minister. What about Nicky Morgan? She brings experience from the outside world. I think that's absolutely vital at this point. Over to you, though. 0345 6060 973. Aisha Hazarika is here. And a story from the paper. I suspect, is it the same subject?
Yeah, there's only one show in town today. So I'm going to start with The Sun. Which is interesting. They've actually done 2 front pages. They've kind of got a wraparound, which is so long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen to you, adieu. They're doing lots of, obviously, EU puns. And then the next front page is very interesting. He says, the real reason Cameron quit, why should I do the hard bleep? And what they're saying is that, despite Cameron sort of being at the plinth in front of number 10, there was extraordinary scenes with him and Sam Cam saying, look, I'll do right by the country. He's actually saying privately, he said to his advisors, look, I'm done now. I campaigned really, really hard. If they want it, they can sort it all out. And in a way, I guess that's kind of human. You can imagine him sort of saying that. Interesting in the inside pages as well, a little bit of kind of insider information about what it was like behind the scenes. He was obviously looking very dignified and together. I thought his statement, it was very swift, but it was pretty respectful and kind of dignified. He did it very quickly. But apparently inside number 10, it wasn't quite as composed and polished, and there were tears. And often when you are a leader who's about to go, you're with your advisors, it's very, very emotional. And, one can only imagine the scenes. I thought there was a very interesting moment where he was very, very together right until the end when his voice cracked at the end.
I thought that was very moving.
It was very moving. And also I noticed that Samantha Cameron, who's of course been by his side, very stylish, very elegant, seen as a real kind of, great sort of first lady of Downing Street, when his voice cracked, her face crumpled.
Exactly, but they're very, very close.
They're very close.
I know you can say that. Obviously they're married, they've got children, they've been through one hell of a lot while they've been in Downing Street.
They absolutely have, including the tragic death, Viven. But moving on, just another quick story in The Sun. Look, I think we all have to. Look, I was probably a more reluctant Remainer. I very much, am one of the people that accept the result. I think it's sort of churlish in a democracy to sort of try and fight the result. I think we do have a divided country. I think what we need is political leadership. We have a divided country. We have both of the big political parties divided and a lot of uncertainty. So I don't think there should be gloating or recrimination from both sides. I think we have to kind of come together and try and sort of look to the future. But one of the things that is interesting in The Sun is that, and a lot of papers have picked up on this, you've talked about it, this win, this stunning victory, was essentially kind of ordinary people, particularly outside London, basically giving 2 fingers up to the establishment and London. Yeah. And look, I'm a Londoner. I'm probably seen as an establishment person, but I kind of accept that. And I think these problems are deep-seated. I think this has been coming down the track for about 20 years, and lots of people have kind of ignored it. But The Sun has got a piece about how lots of the celebrities who the In campaign enlisted towards the end, Gary Lineker, J.K. Rowling, Coldplay, Lily Allen, are kind of saying this is a disgrace, now we're going to leave the country. And I think everyone's got to try and come together now. Look, we all would sort of, when other celebrities, more right-wing celebrities, would say, look, I'm leaving the country if a certain person wins, we'd say, look, come on a minute, Britain's a great country, you've got to stay and fight for it. Yeah, well, I think people have got to kind of urge caution. And also, I think going forward with big political campaigns, I'm always nervous about celebrities and particularly very, very, wealthy international stars kind of wading in. Yes, people are interested to know what their views are.
But get back in your,
I don't want to say get back in your roles, but I think
I agree with you. I think it's ridiculous. There's bigger things going on than what. I mean, look, I know Gary Lineker. He's not a close mate, and all those lot. I mean, honestly, I don't care what lovies have to say or anything else. And people might say, well, what are you doing at the mic? You're a tennis commentator, but I've become a journalist since then. And it's nobody. People vote in their own self-interest.
Yeah. And also, I think
with passion, with the heart.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that was patently evident in this campaign was the rejection of what people saw were elites or experts. Now, look, I think there may be a consequence for that. I don't think we should live in a world where we dismiss experts. I think that is actually kind of dangerous. But I do think anybody who's in a position of power, the message that wasn't being sent to people was, look, you should make the decision. Here's the information. You should become your own expert and make the decision. The way it was presented was like, you kind of don't know what you're talking about. Here's an expert to sort of tell you. And that got a lot of pushback.
Here's an expert, Vladimir Putin. Because I always like to hear what he has to say.
Have you got him on the line?
Yeah, hello, Vladimir.
Hello, Andrew.
He's probably going to run a clip in a few things I've said about him. But anyway, he says, it's understandable why this has happened. No one wants to feed and subsidise weaker economies.
Wow.
There you go. And it absolutely, that hits it. I think it hits it nail on the head. It's certainly one of the arguments anyway. Aisha, thank you. Who is next? Who's going to be the next Prime Minister? Hayes, we go to next. Near Heathrow. Mike, good morning to you.
Hello, good morning.
Hello, Mike. Thanks for waiting on the line. What do you have to say?
It's basically, listen, I don't really have that much to say. I've just got a few things that I have to get off my chest.
Go on then.
One, I don't think Boris Johnson should be Prime Minister.
Okay.
Yeah, there's nothing really special about him, yeah. Two, I think they made a big mistake by getting rid of, obviously he resigned and stuff, David Cameron. Everyone's gone blind. Do you know what I mean? What's this independence about? Leaving the EU? I mean, what is it doing? What is it doing? I'll tell you, what's really getting to be most, yeah?
Yep.
Is I work in an industry of basically from I'm a lorry driver, yeah?
Yep.
And you've got all these guys from Romania, Poland, and they're working only for 30 quid a day in these tip yards and everything, yeah?
Yes.
Who's going to do that? And who's going to do the work on the side of the road? Who's going to build all these streets and everything when everyone in the UK has the Poland, the Romanian doing all of this work for them?
But you know what, Mike? There was two Romanians who are working for friends of mine who've got a small business in South London. These two Romanians, you know what they said? They said, I don't blame you for getting out. We're just over here taking the money and sending it back home again.
Yeah, they're taking the money and they're sending it back home, yeah. But that's half of them. But listen, I've got a few mates that does the same kind of, there's lorry driving as well. And yesterday he was a bit pissed off because...
Sorry, try not to swear, Mike. Thanks, mate.
I do apologise.
It's all right.
He has to go back to his own country. And this is what I want to know, what we really want to know. Anybody that's in the UK at this present moment, do they have to go back to their own country then?
Do you know what, Mike? I wish I had some answers. I have got a list of questions on an A4 and I'm totally confused, and I'm trying to be the leader of my own family, let alone the leader of this country. God knows what is going to go on going forward. I have no idea about that. What about e-hit cards? What about the national health overseas? I just don't know how it works. So you pop over to Spain for a couple of weeks for your holiday this summer. Of course, the euros are going to cost you more, but if you get ill, are you going to have to pay money? Well, perhaps not this year, but when we have left the EU, which is probably in 2 years plus. There are so many practical little questions like that. And when we come back, are we going to be stuck in a really long line showing passports and all the rest of it, or going over there? Are they going to punish us by putting one customs man on there and a whole bunch of EasyJets and Ryanairs turn up at the same time and you're going to be 7 hours trying to get through? Is that the sort of thing that's going to happen? Those sorts of... I know that is selfish, but listen, Mike, got to move on. Appreciate your time this morning. Io, good morning to you in Wallington.
Hello, morning, Andrew. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm really well, thank you. I'd like to know who the next Prime Minister is going to be, so you're going to tell me who you want.
Indeed, in 3 words, as a prelude, anybody but Boris.
Oh, yeah, ABB for you. Anyone but Boris, is it?
Yes, and Lord Boris. I mean, I was quite surprised when Lord Boyle said, when you asked Lord Boyle the question, and his answer was, Boris, simply because in the referendum campaign, he carried along the majority, and that's quite ridiculous because he managed to carry along the majority. And Lord Bell thinks that qualifies him to be the next Prime Minister. Of course not.
Io, he was the leader of that campaign for most people. For most people, a very charismatic mayor of London as well. Why are you against him?
But does that... Let's assume, yes, because he was charismatic, he was effective. Does that automatically translate into competence? Does that automatically make him someone who is, able to effectively run this country? Definitely not. I mean, the first precondition should be competent. He was a mayor of London, but he was neither here nor there. Compared to Ken, and I'm not a Ken lover, he was a very, very second-rate mayor.
Io, who do you want to be the next leader of the Conservative Party and therefore the Prime Minister?
Gove was an effective education secretary. Theresa May is silently but very effectively running one of the most difficult departments in the country. That's the Home Office. Both of them are eminently more qualified than Johnson.
Io, thank you very much indeed. You've got your eye on politics, and we appreciate the call this morning. Aisha, before we have a look at the travel, what else have we got in there?
Well, the Mirror has got some interesting stories. Look, I think the other thing to say is lots of people are looking for, there's lots of big questions that need to be asked. The Leave campaign won. They definitely tapped into a lot of concerns that people had about this country. But the big question now is, have they got the solutions? Have we got the solutions? So the first thing that's very interesting is Nigel Farage, who is a bit cross now because he's been frozen out of the negotiations. He went on GMTV and said that the whole thing about the £350 million a week going to the EU, going to the NHS was actually a bit of an error, and that was a bit of a mistake. So,
he said he never believed it. He was talking to Susanna Reid.
So I think lots of people are, just again either angry or asking the question. What's going to happen? What is actually going to happen now? I mean, we were just talking, you said all the practical things. I know people, for example, in the music industry, orchestras, you were saying about kind of touring companies. What is the visa situation going to be on? But very, very quickly, there's obviously a lot of division in the Conservative Party, but there is also division in the Labour Party as well. There has been a motion of no confidence tabled by Margaret Hodge and another MP, Anne Coffey, against Jeremy Corbyn. So there's going to be quite a lot of drama within the Labour Party.
We're going to talk about that from 9 o'clock, actually, and I'll get your view on that after we've had a look at the travel. And it's not GMTV anymore. You've missed it. You've missed a couple of years.
Good morning, Britain.
Good morning, Britain. It was formerly Daybreak. But you know what?
Sorry.
That's the old days, particularly for me. Anyway, there we go. 8:45 is the time. This is LBC. Andrew Castle with you through until 10 o'clock. Quick look at the travel. Saturday morning. Andrew Castle here. It is almost 10 to 9. It's LBC. I'm with you till 10 o'clock this morning. It is the day after a absolutely momentous vote to leave the EU, Brexit, of course. I wonder how are you feeling about the outcome. Now, let's take the temperature on the streets. LBC's reporter in Hemel Hempstead, Rachel Venables. Good morning.
Good morning. Yes, well, you do join me in Hemel Hempstead this morning, which is in the Dacorum region in Hertfordshire. So Saturday morning, I'm just standing on the high street. So shoppers are starting. Some of the shops and the cafes are already open and the market traders are here. And it's a place that I think really reflects the national picture. In fact, 42,000 people here voted to stay in, 43,000 voted to stay out. It was really, really close. We found out at about 3 a.m. On Friday morning how this place had voted. And I really wanted to find out, because there was only 1,000 votes in it, this was a place that Remain had hoped to win. Hertfordshire as a whole, I think they were hoping they'd win. I wanted to find out how those people, maybe who fell into that gap, voted and really whether they regretted their decisions, because it has been such an incredible 24 hours.
Although I'd like to keep the union, it has to change. And the only way I can see that it's going to change is if we vote to get out, and then maybe we can get renegotiations going.
Yeah. And so I can sense, obviously, you're kind of torn. I think a lot of people I've spoken to today are. But when you saw the reactions, or when you saw just the results, you waking up, say, on Friday morning, or whether you stayed up, what was your first thought when you realised it was actually an out?
Oh, my God. Yeah. I wasn't particularly happy with it. Having said that, I suppose that it's the step that we need, hopefully, to renegotiate, and that's how I see it.
And could I ask if you're happy to tell me, and you don't have to, whether you did vote the other day and how you voted?
I did. I voted out.
And can I ask you, are you happy with that decision?
I am very happy with it.
Why?
Because I want Britain to be great again.
The decision based on that, what sort of things made your decision? And obviously over the last 48 hours there's been huge change, and sort of, did you expect all of that?
I did, yeah. Well, I want the industry to be back to how it was and how we were before we went into the EU, sort of thing. And more concerned about the immigration side of it, to be fair.
I did vote, and I voted out, and but it was not to do. We was hoping that if we go out, we'll be able to sort ourselves out and get ourselves sorted. But I've been hearing like some of the people have over exaggerated on quite a lot of the stuff now, so I'm in the middle now. I don't know if it's the best thing we've done or not, but both sides have been lying to us. So,
and as you say now, you seem to have shifted a little bit more in the middle.
Most of that is to do with now we're getting told that the money that was coming out that we will be saving from the EU was going to help the NHS and all that lot. And I've just found out yesterday that it might not never happen.
Well, Andrew, something I think really interesting to take from all of this is that people who voted out because of things, worries like immigration, about British identity and sovereignty, they had no regrets. They were happy with their decision. Maybe they didn't expect it to go the way they want it, but they said that given the option again, if the vote was today, they would do exactly the same thing again. People like that last gentleman you saw, though, people who made their decision on things like money, on the NHS specifically, and some of the promises that they'd been made, he wasn't so sure. He said he was leaning more now towards in because what he'd really found over the last 24 hours was that things hadn't gone the way he'd expected. And I think that's really interesting, this difference between people who voted because of what they were promised and people who voted because of this sense of British identity and the big problem people keep saying, which was immigration.
Yes, and I wonder where Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party were for quite some time. We'll talk about that after 9 o'clock this morning, talking with policy writer, Cameron's from policy writer, Philip Blond earlier on, thinking there could be a second referendum. I wonder if that is a possibility. We're going to head to Westminster now, to the very heart of the political game, to College Green. LBC's political editor Theo Usherwood is there with a distinguished guest. Morning, Theo.
Yes, good morning. I'm here with Nadeem Zahawi, who supported leaving. He is the Tory MP for Stratford-upon-Avon and a member of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. Mr Zahawi, what happens now?
Well, I think what happens now is steady as she goes, because essentially we've got a period of at least 2, if not longer, years before we negotiate our new settlement with the EU. And I think what you'll find is Monday morning companies will be trading with Europe, with the rest of the world. Remember, 80% of our economy is services. There's never been a single market in services in Europe. We also buy lots of Mercedes and BMWs and AG washing machines from Germany. The head of the CBI in Germany, who's very powerful, actually said, look, we need a non-tariff agreement with the United Kingdom. Lots of commentators this morning are saying that's very doable. So I think the message to the country will be, look, you voted for us to have a different relationship with the EU, for us to take back control of our economy and our borders. That is what we have to deliver. The Prime Minister, I wanted him to stay on and take us through that phase. I listened to his statement very carefully. I think the logic is on his side to say, look, we need a new captain to lead the team. So we're going to have a process which will probably deliver a new leader by October. He or she will have a new team. You have to bring effectively 4 departments together. So the Foreign Office, Business Department, the Cabinet Office and Treasury will have to put together a very strong team to lead that negotiation.
That is all very well, but the noise is off from Jean-Claude Juncker, the President of the European Commission, yesterday, was that actually he wants this process done and dusted quickly, and from his point of view, he needs to be able. He's thinking about what's been said in in Holland with Geert Wilders and the anti-immigration leader saying he wants to it's time for a referendum there, and Marine Le Pen in France saying, well, how about the French have their own referendum? It's not in their interests to make it easy. They want it quick, and they want it painful, and they want to leave us out in the cold. No.
Well, I don't believe they want to leave us out in the cold. I don't think it's in Chancellor Merkel's interest. She's the most powerful woman in the EU and in the Eurozone countries, it's not in their interest to leave us out in the cold. I don't think anyone's going to be talking in that way. I think Jean-Claude Juncker also said that we're going to have an amicable agreement with the United Kingdom. I think it's important that we take it steady as she goes. We've got a 3-month period now to effectively elect a new Prime Minister and a leadership team around them. The good news is, the strength of any organisation is the quality of human beings that are in leadership positions, and we've got plenty of those around the cabinet table and, of course, outside the cabinet as well. Once we have a new Prime Minister, they'll put that team together. We will have that negotiation. But as I said, what people will be waking up to on Monday morning is the channel will be the channel, and we'll continue to trade with Europe and with the rest of the world. We do incredibly well trading in both services and in manufactured goods, and we will continue, I think, to do that. And when all the sort of the dust is settled and some of this scaremongering...
I'm just going to have to interrupt you there, but thank you very much for your time. Back to you in the studio.
Theo, thank you very much indeed. Talking about quality of people, Theo Usher with Conservative MP Nadeem Zahawi there. Who should be the next Prime Minister then? What quality do you see? Good morning, Mel.
Oh, hi, good morning.
Morning.
Hello, hi. I think Michael Gove should be the next Prime Minister. He had a lot of knowledge when the campaign was going on, and I think he helped sway a lot of the population's decision.
Do you think he comes over well enough to be a Prime Minister?
Oh, yes, he did, yeah. I mean, when he did his Sky interview, I mean, he's done a lot of interviews and debates about it. He had a lot of knowledge, and he shows a lot of intelligence, and he's got lots of years of experience.
He's certainly a very brainy bloke. Mel, thank you very much indeed. Aisha Hazarika, who do you think next as Prime Minister?
I think the juggernaut that is Boris Johnson will just be absolutely impossible to stop. And I think even though people are talking about Theresa May as a potential unity candidate, I think a lot of grassroots Conservative supporters will punish her for not being on the right side of the referendum argument for them.
She's quite quiet, though.
She was basically conspicuous by her absence. And
probably
I think there's
busy
a
as
reason
well.
for that. Well, to be honest, I think a lot of the business of government has actually ground to a halt for the last few months because of the EU referendum. And quite clearly, just as we've heard from Nadeem Zahawi, that is going to continue. I mean, we are in this quite extraordinary situation where we are really going to have a hiatus in government. We've had it for the last couple of months, and government's going to be paralysed for the next goodness knows how long. So, we need the government to, get on with telling and reassuring the country. But we need a strong opposition as well. We need a strong opposition.
Who's next for the? I mean, is Corbyn going to stay there?
The truth is, I actually don't know. The Labour Party is definitely entering a difficult period. There's a lot of anger. Remember, 70% of Labour members voted to remain. A lot of Labour members, and there was a great movement with the trade union movement. A lot of members, activists, very much believing in wanting. The Labour Party is actually very united about wanting to stay in the EU. A lot of people are cross, particularly Margaret Hodge and Anne Coffey, in terms of the role that Jeremy Corbyn played. Did he do enough? Did he really strain every sinew to get the message out? They think he didn't. So what's happening now is there is a motion of no confidence, which will be debated, and they'll look if they can do that next week. But that is not binding. That's not a legally binding thing. If there is to be a leadership challenge, you need to get around about 55 Labour MPs to write a letter backing one candidate. The question is, are Labour MPs ready to do that? That would then trigger a leadership contest.
Well, we're going to address that after 9 o'clock this morning, and I'm going to take people's calls on that. We've had a close look at the Conservatives this morning. We'll take a look at Jeremy Corbyn and Labour in just a moment. Aisha, good luck with a rewrite of your show for tomorrow night. I know it's been a busy week. Thank you ever so much indeed for your time. Lovely to see you. Jeremy Corbyn could be ousted. The union's shaky. 24 hours worth of this. Moody's has now downgraded the UK's credit rating overnight. Outlook now negative. So we've talked about the State of the Union and the Conservatives. Corbyn and Labour, tell me what needs to change. Maybe nothing. Ken Livingstone said, look, he did fine. Who should be leading Labour? Is Jeremy your man? And we also talk practically about how we actually manage the exit from the European Union. Do call me 0345 6060 973. The conversation goes on here on LBC. So So the fallout continues. The Brexit effect is what we're talking about. The Prime Minister has resigned, of course. Jeremy Corbyn could be ousted as leader of the Labour Party. Our union is shaky as well. We've spoken about that. All of this has happened in 24 hours. We're talking about the fallout. Overnight, Moody's has now downgraded the UK's credit rating outlook to negative. We're talking about the State of the Union. We talked about the Conservatives. Now, what about Jeremy Corbyn and Labour? What needs to change? That vote of no confidence, the possibility that the motion has been tabled? Well, who should be leading Labour? And we also talk practically about how to manage Brexit this year. Call me 0345 6060 973. Good morning to you, Andrew Castle here. No doubt there's a battle on his hands. Jeremy Corbyn, two senior Labour figures have submitted a no-confidence motion in him, saying he should step down. Key Labour areas really didn't care what he had to say. I went to bed after Sunderland on Thursday night, the 23rd of June. What a seismic day that was. I went to bed after Sunderland. I saw those people leaping around, saying that, showing how happy they were that we were leaving, and I thought, I just wonder. 6 o'clock in the morning, sunshine pouring into the bedroom. First thing you do nowadays, of course, is put the phone on, had a quick look, and it says Britain votes to leave. And I honestly was very, very surprised. Naturally, there are questions for just every aspect of British society now. Are we not tolerant? What about business? The Bank of England and big business losing jobs, investment going forward. Are we going to have any? How long? What the hell is the Lisbon Treaty and what is Article 50? Whoever knew about that beforehand? I thought about all those things. I also thought about Joe Cox, I have to be honest, and I thought about Brendan, and I thought about my own family and my own finances and my own prospects and the company that I work for. I thought about all of that. And then afterwards you think, well, what about Jeremy Corbyn in all this? Because he really wasn't a very big player at all. He wasn't listened to, was he? 10 people in the Parliamentary Labour Party were for Brexit, and yet the country voted for Brexit. So whilst the country hasn't listened to David Cameron, amongst others, David Cameron has quit, fallen on his sword for this. Shouldn't Jeremy Corbyn as well? Is there a possibility that he will? Margaret Hodge, a very senior Labour figure, said yesterday that Jeremy has demonstrated that he doesn't have the qualities of leadership. He didn't start quick enough. He campaigned in a half-hearted way, and the message to our voters was uncertain. And unclear. I'm sorry, but that is not leadership at a time when we do need it. Should he go? Tony Blair. That normally gets the phone lines going. Tony Blair, just the very words. This is what he had to say. He said the leadership of the party was lukewarm in its support for Remain. He didn't mobilise and organise people to understand that this was not a protest against the government or the establishment. Lord Mandelson, Labour voters didn't know where Corbyn was. And then he said, he says, sometimes you just have to consider sometimes whether you're in the right job. Do that all the time. And yet Ken Livingstone defended him. He said no blame for Corbyn whatsoever. He said he was actually pretty much in tune with people, which is reform the EU and Remain. So where do you stand on the issue? Did Jeremy Corbyn let the country down, or did he do the right thing? Was he forceful enough? What is the future of the Labour Party at this point? And it was a question we posed here on LBC before about the EU and the referendum. Does it tear the Conservative Party apart the most, or Labour? Or has the whole thing just been so seismic that the whole thing's gone up in smoke and we just have to see where it all falls and then put it back together again? 0345 6060 973, taking your views this morning. Delighted to be joined by Stephen Kinnock, Labour MP for Aberavon, and also Sam Tarry, who's on the steering committee. He's a steering committee member for Momentum. That's the grassroots organisation that backs Jeremy Corbyn. So I would expect a strong defence. And a very good morning to you, Sam. If I can start with you first, Stephen Kinnock, I wonder, with your family ties to the Labour Party and to Europe as well, you must have been extremely disappointed with Thursday.
Morning, Andrew. Yes, I mean, I was campaigning actively for a Remain vote, and clearly the decision of the British people has not gone the way I would have liked it to, but it's really important that we now accept that decision. We mustn't think about the past, we've got to think about the future. And we've got to think about getting the best possible deal from these Brexit negotiations. It's going to be immensely complicated. There's going to be a huge amount of shuttle diplomacy between Brussels and other cities. We're going to be having constantly shifting negotiating positions. And that's actually the reason that I've supported this motion of no confidence. I'm not so much thinking about how the campaign went, although there were serious weaknesses in the way that we campaigned from the leadership downwards of the party. I'm thinking much more about the coming 3, 5, 10 years of British politics, which I think are going to be completely dominated by this issue of the Brexit negotiations. I think it's really important that whoever the Prime Minister is sets up a cross-party negotiating team, and the deputy on that team should be the leader of the opposition, because it's essential that we have cross-party consensus as we take these hugely important decisions. And my view is, given the scale and the type of the task at hand, and the fact that I don't think Jeremy has much more than a sort of passing interest in the EU and the way it works, and that is actually the irony of this now. We voted for Brexit, but it means we're going to be dominated by the relationship with the EU for the next 3 to 5 years. So I think the job description has changed for the leader of the opposition. I think Jeremy is a fantastic campaigner. He is a man of huge dignity and integrity, and I respect him enormously, but I don't think that he has the skills and the experience that we need for the new job that's at hand.
That's a damning assessment from Stephen Kinnock, isn't it? Sam Tarry, good morning to you.
Good morning. I think actually I agree with part of what Stephen said. I think actually it is true that politics is going to be massively dominated by the Brexit vote, and obviously the aftermath of that. I think I come from a community that voted hugely for Brexit. I'll be honest with you, I felt that the writing was on the wall for a long time. One of my local MPs, John Collis, actually, was in agreement that we were talking 10 years ago that communities, unfortunately, had actually been failed too much by the Labour Party. Because actually we had been seen to be too distant, too much of an elite, not really in touch with those people. And I think personally that actually Jeremy is seen as a politician that's not part of the political elite, that is actually someone that does have a healthy degree of Euroscepticism. And I think that even people voting for Remain 2 days ago were doing so probably not wholeheartedly thinking the EU in its current form is actually the greatest thing out there. And so I think actually it wouldn't really have made any difference whatsoever, whoever we'd had as a leader of the Labour Party, because people weren't doing it as a verdict on Jeremy Corbyn. I mean, they had every single trade union affiliated to the Labour Party, apart from about 1 or 2, actively out campaigning. And the Labour movement really threw the kind of kitchen sink at that campaign. So Labour voters certainly knew the position of the Labour Party, Labour movement. And I think actually at the moment we need to be focusing our guns on one enemy, and that is a Tory party, and that is a very, very divided...
But you're still banging on about that, though, Sam, to be quite honest with you. Jeremy Corbyn has been a huge disappointment to just about everybody that's not on the far left, which is what, of course, you are on. You are the grassroots organisation that has put Jeremy Corbyn in. We've just heard from Stephen Kinnock that he doesn't feel like his party leader is the man for this job, not even looking back, but going forward. I mean, is there any chance that you could... that you would ever say, well, Jeremy, do you know what? We've loved you up until this point, but we don't think you're the man for the job. You're still right behind him?
Look, I've been elected twice myself as a local councillor. I'd say probably on the centre-left of the Labour Party, actually, for what it's worth. I think that if things look completely disastrous, yes, I would be someone that would call for any leader to go.
How about a vote of... Sorry to interrupt, Sam. What about a vote of confidence?
The reality is, there's an online petition of Labour Party members, somewhere north of 150,000 people saying let's support Jeremy Corbyn. 10 MPs who've got a letter in the PLP. I think this is exactly the problem. I think that the grassroots of the Labour Party, they're not just the grassroots. Actually, if you look at what happened in the referendum, ordinary people feel they've been hectored and lectured by an elite. And actually, I think what we need to do here is to get behind the leader, show a degree of unity. My trade union, 10 other trade union leaders have actually put out a letter just in the last 24 hours saying we should back Jeremy Corbyn.
Okay, Sam, let's let Stephen Kinnock have a word on that. I'm sure you'd like to comment.
Well, we will have the discussion in the Parliamentary Labour Party on Monday, and I think there'll be a vote either on Monday or Tuesday. So don't want to preempt the result of that vote.
No, but you are supporting this, and we've got a member of Momentum on the line on the other hand. What would you say to those members of Momentum who have given an enormous mandate to...
It's not about Momentum, it's about ordinary Labour Party members. It's nearly 400,000 of them. And actually, I think if what happens on Monday, and if there are people pushing that letter, we are going to descend into a civil war. The Labour Party is not currently in a civil war. The Tory Party are. And we need to take advantage of that situation and start putting the boot into the Tory Party.
Sam, OK, fine. Let Stephen respond to that point.
My point on this is that Jeremy absolutely had a huge mandate from the membership, but that was in a different time. What we have to understand that this vote has changed everything, including the job description of the leader of the Labour Party. It's going to completely dominate British politics for the next 3 to 5 years, including the general election, which I'm pretty sure is going to come before the end of this year or early next. Now, I think that if we go into that election with a leader who doesn't seem to be aligned with the actual issues on the that are going to be on the agenda, which are around how we get our relationship with the single market right, how we protect workers' rights, how we deal with all of the 27 member state governments, how we deal with the EU institutions, how we bring that back to Parliament, build consensus across the parties. This is time, in my view, of national crisis now. And, I just don't think that Jeremy is that sort of politician. He is a guy
Stephen,
let's campaigning, protesting. That's great. That's what he was elected for. But the mandate has changed.
Sam, he's a placard carrier. He's a man of protest. He is not the man for a national crisis.
Look, if it comes to defending trade union rights and work rights at work, I want no better person than Jeremy Corbyn, with a track record of over 30 years of campaigning on those issues and being absolutely principled on them. Actually, I do think we need someone who's got a healthy degree of scepticism. The reality is that what's been shown is that Jeremy was more in tune with most Labour voters by being quite sceptical of the European Union, but perhaps in the end saying yes, he should stay in, than actually the vast majority of the Parliamentary Labour Party and the campaign we ran. That is actually going to cause us an awful lot of problems. We haven't even begun to discuss how we deal with that situation.
Sam, is he an electable in the country? Are you telling me that Jeremy Corbyn is electable as the leader of the Labour Party? He could become Prime Minister. Do you think that the country sees him as electable?
I think at the moment the country is in a great state of flux. I think that Jeremy's got a tremendous opportunity to win the next general election and to lead the Labour Party into that general election. I think people are looking for someone that says, I'm not part of a system that has just failed us time and time again. I want someone that's got change, but also someone that's got integrity and honesty. One difference with Jeremy that no other politicians have is that people believe what he says, and that's incredibly powerful.
Well, not
negotiations with the EU.
Not everybody, Sam. I'm going to give the last word to Stephen because I've got to pop off to the travel now. Stephen, a last word for you on Jeremy Corbyn specifically. It's what we're talking about this hour.
Yeah, I mean, I think he is a politician of a certain type, and he has got some absolutely outstanding strengths, but I don't think that he fits with the job description that we're now looking for. I also think this thing about the elite, the fact is that Labour MPs are on the ground. I'm speaking now from my constituency. I had a full day of constituency events yesterday. I do the surgeries, the kind of surgeries that Jo Cox was on her way to when she was so tragically murdered. So I do think it's really important that people across our movement stop using this term of the we're somehow part of the elite. We are connected to our constituents closely every single day that we are in our constituencies, and we're dealing with constituency casework on an ongoing basis. So I think it's really damaging that we keep using that kind of language. I hope that we will now have a robust debate about the kind of leadership that we need in the party, and we will see what happens in the vote on Tuesday.
Stephen, we've heard from Momentum. On the other side of things, we now need to know what the role, and get your opinion on the role of UKIP is going forward. There's no doubting their popularity. What is the role for UKIP from here?
Well, I don't know. I mean, perhaps they've sort of lost their raison d'etre now. Whether Farage will try and set up some kind of pressure group to push the negotiation process in the direction that he wants it to go in, I really don't know. I mean, I think, the language that he's used when he came out and made that speech saying this was a victory for decent people, implying that the 16 million people that voted for Remain are somehow not decent. He just continues to divide and polarize. We now need to pull together. This has got to be a moment of, defending the national interest, making the best of the deal that we possibly can, and keeping Mr Farage to the sidelines as much as possible.
Stephen Kinnock, Labour MP for Aberavon, thank you for starting the conversation this hour. Sam Tarry, appreciate your time. He's on the steering committee for Momentum and making a fulsome case for the leadership of Jeremy Corbyn of the Labour Party. The future of the Labour Party is what we're talking about. 0345 6060 973. Did you feel let down by them? By Corbyn particularly, or do you think he was an inspirational leader who spoke from the heart, a man of integrity? Over to you with the calls in just a moment. Travel next here on LBC.
This is LBC.
A very good morning to you. 24 minutes past 9. The future of the Labour Party is what we are discussing. Is Corbyn the man for the job here or not? And we will be going to Theo Ashwood in just a moment. Two senior Labour figures, of course, have submitted a no-confidence motion in him, saying that he should step down. So we'll find out more on that in just a moment. Should he be the man at the helm here? Tony Blair had some firm things to say about him. We didn't do a good job of explaining the implications, said Tony Blair. And he was interested. He was also saying about the rise in the extremes on both wings of the political debate. And he said it's an international phenomena at the moment, and somebody has to regain the middle ground. So we'll talk about that in just a moment. And you know what? Let's be honest about it. Jean-Claude Juncker, right, who I had a bit of a rant about earlier, I feel very, very strongly, and I wonder if this was the mood that went round the country before the vote. When he comes out and says, we've got to do Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty, we've got to invoke that now, we've got to get on with it, we've got to move in indecent haste. And then he smirks at a European audience with their little corporate bob haircuts and their headphones on for the translation, and he's sitting in some expensive building which clearly doesn't function as well as it should do. Cost a whole load of money, 350 million. No, it doesn't, but there we are. That's the sort of thing that drives us mad. We are an island. This is an island that won 2 world wars, thank you very much. We understand about what we want better than you. Okay, so when you turn round and you lecture us and say we have got to get things going, there's no time to be sort of debating properly. We got to get on with it, and we've got to move. Will there be concessions? No. If you had given concessions in February, perhaps David Cameron didn't negotiate hard enough, or maybe it just wasn't possible. Perhaps this wouldn't have happened in the first place. And surely Britain once again is leading here. And there's actually going to be a domino effect, and the European Union is going to collapse. And what happens when Italy has financial difficulties fully aired this summer? What about when Greece renegotiates? You think Sweden are into all this? You think that other countries are I don't know. There's so many. They're talking about a Frexit next. Marine Le Pen loves it over in France. And it's words like Juncker's, and it's an attitude that goes with it, that funny little smirk is going to drive everybody away. How dare he do that? Honestly, I'm so outraged by that. Not necessarily, on the side of the argument you might think on this, but I must say, things like that drive you crazy. Anyway, we're talking about the Labour Party now. Did we see much leadership from Jeremy Corbyn? Is he the man for leading the Labour Party at a time of crisis, national crisis? Let's talk to Theo Ashwood. He's the political editor for LBC. He is on College Green with an important mover in this debate. Theo, morning.
Yes, I'm joined by Anne Coffey, the Labour MP for Stockport, and Anne was one of 2 MPs to sign a letter of no confidence in Jeremy Corbyn. There will be a debate at the Parliamentary Labour Party meeting on Monday evening, which is going to be lively, I would imagine, and then there'll be a vote on Tuesday. And if I could just start by asking, Why did you feel this was the right time to sign the letter?
The result of the referendum was a disaster for the Labour Party, and Jeremy Corbyn has to take his share of that responsibility. The campaign was lacklustre, it didn't contain enough strong messages, it didn't start early enough, it wasn't strategically well managed, and throughout the campaign Jeremy seemed half-hearted about it and lacking enthusiasm. And if you lack enthusiasm for something that's fundamentally so important to the Labour Party as staying in Europe, you could hardly be surprised if the electorate think, well, if you are not very enthusiastic about it, why should we be?
But isn't there, and I'm playing devil's advocate with this one, isn't there a case to say that actually Jeremy Corbyn's Euroscepticism is more in line with working class communities, especially in the north of England, and that actually if the Parliamentary Labour Party hadn't put pressure on him to take a more pro-European view, a view that he, as you say, he didn't really feel, then actually he might have found himself in much closer step than other than colleagues in the House of Commons?
We are a pro-European party, and he is the leader of our party.
You're a pro-European parliamentary party.
Our policy is pro-European. Our manifesto is pro-European.
Well, some of your voters, and I'm not talking, I was going to say members, but I'm not saying members, I'm saying your voters out there, your traditional voters out there, are really unhappy with the European Union.
We are a pro-European party. He is the leader of a pro-European party. He knew that when he stood for leader, and he knew that the job of the leader of the party is to enthusiastically embrace the policies of that party. That is his job as leader.
And now is the time to go?
Well, I think that there have been concerns about his leadership over the time he has been leader. This is not just
say that again.
Not one example. And all I would say is if you have a football team, when you fail to score a goal and your team goes into relegation, you're trailing, then people would think maybe it's time to look at your manager. And I just think it is time to look at our manager, and I think Jeremy should resign.
And Coffey, thank you very much. Back to you in the studio.
Theo, thank you very much indeed. I note Shadow Cabinet met yesterday, Angela Regal and Andy Burnham coming out and calling for stability, and they would not support the motion. It is still unfolding. And Coffey, they're going into football. We forgot the Euros were on. It was Wales versus Northern Ireland a little bit later on. I think we all need 90 minutes off from this whole thing, but not until a lot later. Join my debate, 0345 6060 973. We're talking about the future of the Labour Party. I know it's something that you'll feel strongly about. Give us a buzz. 9:31 is the time. It's a Saturday morning here on LBC. Interesting debate, isn't it? 9:34 is the time here on LBC. An interesting debate on every single angle about what is next. No doubt, now and again, you need a little bit of time off just to sort of figure all this out, and that's what this is about. It's about airing our views. It's about getting into a conversation. Who should be leading the Labour Party is what we happen to be concentrating on now. Vote of no confidence, of course. That's going to be talked about tomorrow. Labour Party will need 50 MPs if they're to go ahead and remove this man who is incredibly popular amongst the young. 75% of young people voted Remain. They don't care about UKIP. They're not interested in the Tories, and they especially don't want slippery blaggers like the Blairites either. They want Corbyn. And I wish I had a name on this text, but thank you. As for attracting back the EU leavers, what will they do? Put up a Brexiter like Kate Hoey or John Mann? Are they serious? Corbyn was at least sceptical, which they could forgive, particularly as he was honest about the single market and controlling immigration. So was he, in fact, in tune with people who voted to leave the European Union? The EU is to blame as it refused to offer the UK any meaningful reform. If it had negotiated in good faith, we would have remained, says Steve D, and that is at LBC on Twitter. 0345 6060 973. Where should the Labour Party go from now? Joe is in Cheshunt. Good morning.
Hi, Andrew. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right, thank you. A little bit confused by the amount of information out there. What about you?
I am so annoyed with the Blairite side of the Labour Party at the moment. I'm a lifelong Labour supporter. And the thing with the referendum is, for the first time in my 30 years of voting, because I'm 48, I felt like my vote could count. And I voted out. And that's no reflection on anything Jeremy Corbyn said. I've got total respect for him allowing us to think and read and learn and give us some honest facts.
It was David Cameron that took the big risk, though, and allowed the vote to happen in the first place, as promised.
Exactly. Labour consistently said under Ed Miliband during the last election, and I was in Labour headquarters for part of the results coming in on the night, that we will not take Britain into a referendum. David Cameron and the Conservatives did. Why the hell is Jeremy Corbyn in any way responsible for the outcome? Because the responsibility of the campaigning for the referendum was on the in and the out. It wasn't parliamentary politics, was it? It was everyone should be free to say what they're committed to.
But yet, no, that's absolutely right, Joe. But seeing as you're a passionate supporter of the Labour Party, are you a passionate supporter of Jeremy Corbyn? You say you respect him, but not so much that you followed him on the most important decision of a generation. Because that is so much more important than party politics. And what's really disappointed me, ever since Corbyn got the mandate, got voted in as leader, and he is a conviction politician. He's not one that will blindly toe the line and tell us stupid people what we should be doing. Yesterday morning, we had the Dark Lord, Peter Mandelson, on the TV saying that all of us Labour voters who voted out are stupid. And that kind of sums up the atmosphere that I felt within the Labour Party. You can't draw a line between old Blairite Labour and the Conservatives. Mandelson also said you just have to consider sometimes whether you're in the right job or not. And it was an obvious reference to Jeremy Corbyn. So you'd be happy with Jeremy Corbyn leading your party into a general election. Do you think he's got a chance of winning? Yes, absolutely. I would go further and say if Jeremy Corbyn remains as Prime Minister and there is a general election, with the mood of the nation at the moment, Labour supporters will come back to Labour. But if this vote of no confidence happens and Labour decide to scuttle back into the middle ground again just to try and get elected, I will not be voting for them because they are not the conviction Labour Party that I vote for. Do you think that Jeremy Corbyn, being a conviction politician, really wanted to stay in the EU? I have total respect for what he actually stood up and said when he was asked. He said, we should, it is better for the country to stay in the European Union, but it is severely flawed and there are issues to be sorted out. It's not his responsibility to keep us in. It was the Conservative Party. And the hypocrisy is everyone's recommending Theresa May become our next Prime Minister, leader of the Conservatives. Her position on the European Union was almost identical to Jeremy Corbyn. But it was the Labour heartlands, it was the Midlands and heading north, the Labour heartlands which didn't follow a Labour leader, and that has to have implications on a general election scale, doesn't it? No, I disagree totally, because a lot of the Labour heartlands, and my heart's Labour, and we've all been very disillusioned since the Blair government got into power, because the Labour parties that we all vote for just seem to disappear into obscurity. He won 3 elections. He's actually got power. Exactly. But he won 3 elections. That's not the be-all and end-all of life. But running around with a placard and protesting is not the meaning of life either, is it? I mean, it's not the be-all and end-all. Well, it is to me. I don't want someone that ends up like Tony Blair currently does, costing us millions of pounds in security in his mansion in Oxfordshire, because no one, he has committed some horrendous offences in our name. Joe, it's good talking to you. That's the Chilcot report you're talking about. July the 6th, that's going to be coming out, so we'll see exactly what that says. Joe, thank you very much indeed. We'll continue our debate on the future of the Labour Party. Let's talk to Hugo Dixon. He's founder of InFacts and eminent former columnist for Reuters. Hello, Hugo. A very good morning to you. It is there's an awful lot of issues swirling around. I wonder if you could give me a little bit of clarity.
Well, I think the first thing is that we're in the midst of, or the early stage of, a political and economic crisis. And a crisis is a situation where things move very, very rapidly.
Right.
It's sort of like you're watching, one of those sort of old cartoons, and then they speed it up so that everything moves at 10 times the speed that everything previously was. And that's why we're all finding it so difficult to absorb the amount of information. Jeremy Corbyn's leadership under threat. Cameron has resigned. Boris may be the next Prime Minister. Nicola Sturgeon says that Scotland is highly likely to have a second referendum on independence. And there is more coming down the track. Now, in terms of how best to, I put my cards on the table. I was very strongly campaigning for Britain to remain in the EU, just so you know where I'm coming from. But in terms of where we're going to, I think we need to, and the reason I was advocating that is because I thought that we still have a position, or we had a great position in the EU where we could have led it. And now we're in a situation where we're going to face political and economic damage. So the task, from my perspective, is to minimize that damage. The most important thing is not to succumb to Brussels' request that we immediately trigger formal divorce proceedings, this so-called Article 50. Because as soon as we do that, then a 2-year time clock gets ticking. And the problem is that we don't have a Prime Minister, well, we have a caretaker Prime Minister, and we don't have a plan for what we want from our exit deal. Because the Leave camp, Boris Johnson, Michael Gove, etc., they said a lot of things. They made a lot of promises. They told, frankly, a lot of untruths during the campaign, but they didn't set out a clear plan. So the first order of business has to be for the Tory party to choose a new leader who will be the Prime Minister. That person, probably Boris, needs to form his cabinet, and then he needs to determine what is the plan. And only then, once he's determined a plan and checked with Brussels and, Angela Merkel, etc., that they are reasonably agreeable to that plan, then that plan should be published. It shouldn't all be done behind closed doors, and it should be approved by Parliament. And then, and only then, in my view, should they trigger Article 50, which is these formal divorce proceedings, and then get on with it.
So, Hugo, just make me feel better now. I woke up and it was 6 o'clock in the morning with the sun streaming through, and it says we're leaving. And then, of course, all hell has broken loose, and you've done a great job of listing several of those things. I could quote many massive companies who are saying, well, future investment we're not sure about, and we don't know where our headquarters is going to be, and all the people that we pay or who buy houses, who use services and spend money, they'll probably be in some other country. Could you give me something positive about this, please, and make me feel a little better?
I think it's too early to be. I think it's too early to be positive. But if I was to have any sort of positivity now, what I would say is that I hope that the British people will realise that they have been sold a pup, and that their politicians, and it's not just the Leave camp. I think we're living in a time where the people don't trust the politicians. I mean, your previous caller was, railing about Tony Blair and his spin. And the fact is, we've been living in an era of frankly, several decades now of politicians not telling the truth, promising things that they won't deliver. One of the reasons why we voted to leave was because the Labour Party, when it was in government, said that when it opened the doors to the East Europeans, that the numbers would be, I think, like 13,000 or something anyway, some ridiculously small number. Then you had David Cameron promising that he would cut the net migration to the tens of thousands. Well, he didn't just miss the target by a little bit. He was way off target. Yeah. The result of which is that you've now got a situation where you've had then the Leave camp coming in with even more extravagant promises, such as that you're going to get £350 million a week for the NHS, based on, frankly, a lie that we send £350 million to Brussels. We don't send it. And the reason why I'm saying there may be some optimism, but it's going to be way down the line, is that I think that the British people have to go through a psychological process of realizing not just that the previous generation of politicians was playing fast and loose with the truth, but that the current Leave camp has taken that to stratospheric levels, and then maybe the conditions will be created where we can actually have a new breed of politicians who are going to be far more honest with the people and more principled.
Hugo, thank you very much indeed. I think you've laid the basis for a question that we might ask tomorrow. What is it going to take for us to trust our politicians or any politicians again? Continuing the conversation about Labour, what's next for them? Your calls, 0345 6060 973. It's LBC at 9:46 on a Saturday morning. Saturday morning on LBC, Andrew Castle here. In a few minutes' time at 10 o'clock, Michael Crick and David Mellor will no doubt have much to say. Later on, it is Tom Swarbrick. Text coming in, Corbyn played a blinder by sitting back and letting the people decide, which is the purpose of a referendum, says Colin. He's in Buckhurst Hill. Cameron got too involved. Corbyn let Cameron destroy himself. Who would have thought a few months ago that the Prime Minister would be out of office and the Leader of the Opposition would still be in his post? Colin, thank you very much indeed for that. Let's talk to Alex in Edgware as we discuss the future of the Labour Party and specifically Jeremy Corbyn. Alex, good morning. Are you a Corbyn supporter?
I am, yeah. I'm actually heading up to a meeting this morning where Jeremy's going to talk about where we go from here. But I think your last text message that came through is quite accurate. Jeremy realised the mistake that Labour made in Scotland, which was we didn't really listen to the people and let the people decide. We tried to cajole and bully them into a decision about their future. And the public sometimes don't appreciate that. And in the end, they voted to stay within the union in Scotland, and but what Labour lost, and the SNP got a dividend from that. And I think one of the things that some of the people in the Labour Party now who are suggesting that Jeremy steps down are missing is that 2004 and the Eastern European countries that came in to the European Union, a lot of Labour heartland support was lost. Because of that move and the fact that we didn't put transitionary controls in when those countries came in. And a lot of people haven't forgiven Labour for that. So to suggest that Jeremy Corbyn is somehow responsible for the Remain camp losing is absolutely preposterous.
But he was seriously lukewarm, wasn't he? I mean, that was good. That was a good thing, was it?
Yes, Andrew, and you've been brilliant this morning, Andrew. They've really stressed you out, but you've been great. I mean, he was lukewarm because that's how the British people are about the European project. They're lukewarm, and we always have been. What disappoints? I was Remain, but what disappoints me, because it was about, Jeremy was saying, it's not great, but on balance, because of the economy, and I think he's proven right with what we've seen in the last 24 hours, we should stay in. Because you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
What about the PLP? What about the PLP meeting in London? The vote of no confidence that could lead to a secret ballot. He could go.
It could. I don't think he'll go, Andrew. But what will happen is they could trigger a leadership challenge. But what members of the Labour Party have to realise is Jeremy is a correcting factor. He's a resetting figure. In other words, the Labour Party, if you think of it as a computer program, has gone wrong very badly, and it needed to be reset and with its electorate. And sometimes you need a figure that will do that, bring Labour back to its roots.
Okay.
The Blairites just have not got the message that the British public do not like being patronised. They want some honesty, they want some integrity, and that's what Jeremy Corbyn offers. He's not about the show business. And, as this post-referendum decision unfolds, who knows that the public might be looking for a figure that is honest, does have integrity, and offers some continuity. He's pretty much kept his opinions about the EU consistent over the last 30 years.
But you know what? He's presided. Alex, I know you're a passionate supporter of him. I can hear it in your voice, and I appreciate everything you're saying here. But you know what? you know, when Tony Blair says that this man, Corbyn, did not mobilise and organise people to understand this was not a protest against the government or the establishment, you know, that's a stinging criticism. It is,
Andrew, you're right. But the point is this. The Prime Minister, and this is crucial, made this more about him than about anything else. And what was really telling, Andrew, is if you watch those televised debates, the Prime Minister was losing the trust of the British people in those debates. He was being laughed at, jeered, and booed. Now, the thing is,
but this is like a by-election. It's a good chance to give the establishment and the political classes and the business elite a good kicking. But it's not about that. It was never about that. For me personally, it wasn't about that, Alex. No. This is about the future of our country economically as much as anything. And your leader has presided over the party at a time where we have left Europe and the Labour heartlands have left him. They haven't followed him. So whilst they might respect his authority and his integrity in some ways, well, where was the actual votes?
But you see, the thing is, Andrew, there's no point going against those people, because many of those people who voted out because the European project hasn't been sold to them in a way that they want to buy. And and this is the reality. At least Corbyn recognised that reality rather than try to patronise them into making a decision that they don't want to make. The referendum, the idea is the public must speak. Now, it's a very close decision, and what we have to do now is it might mean that there's going to be a halfway house between being sort of in but not really in, and not being completely out.
Oh, now, I don't know if you heard what Mr. Juncker said. Don't know what
I did.
He was.
I did.
I didn't like the way you said it either. Hey, listen, Alex, I've got to go because Sally's on the phone. Good to speak to you, mate. Take care. Sally is in Kingston. Morning, Sally. What do you think?
Good morning, Andrew. What we really need is somebody with real leadership at present, somebody positive, somebody to lead our country, because all I'm hearing is terrible negative talk. Mm-hmm. And if we want Britain to succeed, in or out, and we're out at present, I don't know what will happen in the future, but I think that we need somebody with conviction, or we need somebody that's helping Jeremy Corbyn with conviction, like Gazelle Stewart or Kate Hoey. I mean, they were magnificent, really, I think. Yes. And I think he needs to get the right people around him. He needs to get rid of the Andy Burnhams and the Diane Abbotts and all these kind of people who seem to me to be interested in their own careers more than, they're interested in the country. And we need to talk Britain up. And I'm worried that we're talking it down all the time, even more so now.
Sally, thank you very much indeed. Got to move on. David in Thornton Heath, morning.
Hello, good morning, Andrew.
Hello, mate. Labour, Corbyn.
Hello. Well, basically, in regards to Jeremy Corbyn, I feel that during the EU referendum campaign, he was very poised, very calm, speaking his mind, speaking as much of the truth, in his own view.
I hardly heard him speak at all, to be honest, David.
Well, I think what it is, he's been very trying to let the British people decide for themselves what they felt was best for the future of Britain, really. And I think the problem is with this country and probably around the world these days is that there's a lot of focus on showmanship, there's a lot of focus on glitz and glamour and who can shout the loudest. And that's not Jeremy Corbyn's style. He's never been that way, apart from protest marches, of course, when he's, doing the demonstrations. But it's not his style. It's not all the Yaboo sucks, that you get in traditional British politics, which actually upsets voters. And it's actually not the sort of thing young people want. There's a lot of young voters who support Jeremy Corbyn and his values. And I think this is what frightens the Blairites and the Conservative Party, is that Jeremy Corbyn is actually very popular with young voters, and these are the future voters of his country. And it always makes me cringe when I actually hear Tony Blair saying anything, because I'm thinking this is a man who,
won 3 elections.
Sorry, say again?
Won 3 elections.
Well, he's won 3 elections, fair enough. But, when it comes to the traditional Labour values, he's actually put me off the Labour Party. I mean, I was very keen to support the Labour Party in the past. I mean, I'm actually Green myself. But this is a man that's created what I call Tory light, where you've got the Conservatives, and then you've got New Labour or Progressive Labour as the only alternative. And I'm thinking,
just give me a yes or no on this, David. Do you see a day when Jeremy Corbyn could be the Prime Minister? Yes or no?
Yes.
OK, thank you ever so much for closing the debate. Thank you for all of your calls and all your contributions. It's the end of a quite extraordinary week in politics. I'll have another crack at this tomorrow morning from 7 o'clock. Later on today, Tom Swarbrick is with us, and next, and there'll be some strong opinions around. They've been in the thick of it for so many years. David Mellor and Channel 4's political correspondent Michael Crick. I wish you a happy Saturday. Take care. Have a good day.